Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another round of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022. Of course, the inaugural season of the NXTCC, as it's known in short, hosted on iRacing, the premier sim racing platform available on PC. And tonight marks round 8 of the 10-round calendar as the season presses on in its second half. And here's the case: the intensity of the racing only gets higher and higher with each and every lap turned and each and every circuit visited. Today, we're in Italy at the Monza Circuit because whilst we're not able to have Thruxton in iRacing as it currently stands, and in the accordance of the BTCC or the British Touring Car Championship calendar, we'll be making our way to Thruxton for its second round right now if we were following the schedule exactly to the plan. It is the case that we looked for the closest equivalent to Thruxton, and with Canadian Time Motorsport Park being our first visit to Thruxton, the Canadian version of Thruxton if you will, we decided that we'd try to be multicultural and make our way across the European continent to the Monza Circuit, given the high average lap speed of the Monza Circuit and indeed a venerable circuit of the ages for high speed racing. And well, this will have to be our Italian Thruxton if you will. And our schedule for tonight, times in British Summer Time, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1 UTC +1, is as follows. It is the case that in just under 19 minutes time we'll be going qualifying for 15 minutes, and in this case all our drivers will be out on the circuit as always, looking into putting the best possible lap times over the course of the 15-minute session. And we suspect that qualifying is going to be highly tactical tonight, given the nature of the Monza Circuit and the fact that slipstream is such a key factor at this circuit, which sees lap times only improve ever more the more and more of the tow that you can pick up over the course of the lap. And more on that when we do go into qualifying. We'll head then straight into our first race of the evening at 8:15, and that'll be sprint race number 1. All of our sprint races, of course, being 20 minutes in length and not having any mandatory pit stops. The only pit stops you'll be seeing is if a driver's picked up a load of damage from an incident and therefore needs to come in to repair. But our first race will kick off at 8:15. After that, we'll take a brief break before returning at what will be at 10 to 9 for our second race, the second of our 3 sprint races. That's sprint race number 2. And then we'll take another short break before returning for our final race of the evening at approximately at 9:20. And that'll be sprint race number 3, where we bring it all to a close. And of course, the grid's being set differently for sprint race 2 and sprint race 3 compared to sprint race 1. And we'll very shortly tell you again how those grids will be set as per the rule set for this season. This broadcast is being, of course, brought to you live on free media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a fan of YouTube, you can go to the official Next Gen Racing YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com and search for Next Gen Racing and tune in there. Alternatively, if you're more of a Facebook user, you can always go to the Next Gen Racing Facebook group. You can go to facebook.com/groups/Next Gen Racing. Or last but not least, if you're more Twitch TV inclined, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in live on Twitch. And who is TX141? Well, that is I, your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX141 or Brit of the Spit, and I'll be continuing to bring you all of your coverage throughout the entirety of this season. Indeed, it has been a journey today, a fantastic journey of racing. And this journey is showing no signs of slowing down over the remainder of it as we go closer and closer towards the season finale. But as we do get ready to go racing, let's show you that season as it stands, indeed what's left on the schedule and what we have cleared thus far. Well, as we do look to the calendar, then you can see that today, of course, is the 29th of September, so we're almost right towards the bottom now at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. But before that, last time out on the 22nd of September, we were back in the United Kingdom at the Snetterton 300 circuit. And there, on one of our longest laps on the calendar, we did see some fantastic racing, also some very near-the-mark moments, particularly in both Race 2 and Race 3, where elbows came out. Indeed, multiple incidents did occur, but we only saw one major safety car really intervene with the racing, and that was in Race number 3, and Snetterton 300 really saw the intensity of the racing increase after what was a fantastic return to racing in round number 6 back on the 15th of September at the Scottish circuit of Knockhill. And there we saw many a driver try to brave those high curves, indeed the undulations, but quite a few became unstuck, and it was the combination of HSR which pulled off an absolutely superb string of results there. But before that, we had the mid-season break, and in the first 5 rounds, we started with what was on the 4th of August, the Donington Park National Circuit, all the way back at the beginning, and what a season opener we had there with no drivers assigned to class, and therefore it was a free-for-all in terms of drivers trying to pick up as many points as possible and declare their status at the front of the field and trying to get themselves set up for the class they were targeting to do so. Then it was round number 2 at Brands Hatch Indy on the 11th of August, and there on the shorter variant of Brands Hatch, we did see plenty of racing action despite the very short circuit, indeed one of our shortest laps on the calendar, practically as short as Knockhill, but whilst the circuit was short, the action came in plentiful supply, and we did see some major overtakes being performed, and really Rivano Motorsport in the hands of Gavan Gardener coming to the foray and delivering so well that when we made our way across the Atlantic Ocean to the North American continent and to Canada in particular in our first Thruxton visit at the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, we saw on the 18th of August that Chris Daines also took to the field and pulled off an absolutely scintillating set of results and flying on high in Verano Motorsport, picking up some major points. Now on the 25th of August, it was Alton Park, where we saw at the Alton Park National Circuit a bit of a change up in the order. Plenty of battles, quite a few cars going off circuit, and some major incidents, and a lot of racing interrupted by safety cars at Alton Park. And whilst we didn't have as much racing per se as we'd expect for the normal 60 minutes, the time we did have was absolutely superb. And then round number 5 was, of course, in the Netherlands at the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit, replicating Croft, which is not available in iRacing. And on the 1st of September, I'm pleased to say there, we had perhaps the ultimate candidates for overtakes and battles of the season, particularly in our final race leading. Despite technical issues with the broadcast, we came back at the right time to see a 7-way battle for the win, and that went all the way down to the wire. So that's the story so far, and what have we still got to look forward to after tonight at Monza? We'll have 2 rounds left. On the 6th of October, in the penultimate round, we'll be making our way back to the United Kingdom, across the channel from the European continent to Silverstone National, and indeed the short layout of the Silverstone circuit, but not to be forgotten about, and fantastic racing typified there at the Silverstone circuit with being high stakes, high fury, and higher intensity, and all the way through our drivers will be looking to outbrake one another into the corners, much like Monza tonight, funnily enough, but the difference at Silverstone is we do have some sweeping corners as well, and in our season finale on the 13th of October, perhaps the number 13 unlucky for some, but that date will stick in the calendars for many, because we'll be making our way back down to the Garden of England in Kent on the southeast county for what is the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, our second and final visit to Brands Hatch, the full layout there, and we can expect to end the season on an ultimate high, because that circuit, whilst it's difficult to overtake at in touring car racing class cars, overtakes will happen, and we're sure to see our drivers really give it everything to end their season on a high. Now, speaking of a high, as we make our way over to the overall Drivers' Championship standings, we can see that at the top on a high, Jamie Dorey on 337 points as he leads his way into this round after a good run of performances at the Snetterton circuit, all being round race number 2 there, not going the way he wanted to after that incident with Chris Daines, but beyond that, picking up some major points and continuing to maintain his advantage over the chasing pack. Led there by Gavan Gardener in P2, the pro driver there on 295 points, not having the day he wanted at Snetterton, not quite on the pace compared to where he might have liked to have been, and Chris Daines, who had the greater pace out of the Verano Motorsport pair, in the end just not quite able to deliver after a few incidents saw him drop down the field. But on 265 points, he'll still be supported his teammate, indeed still going for all those wins, as many as he can, in order to get the best possible results and fly the banner high alongside his teammate Gardener for Verano Motorsport in the team's championship. John Higgins Jr. in P4 there on 239 points, and whilst he was not in attendance last time out, I'm sorry to say as well, we will not be seeing Higgins Jr. take to the circuit today, but it's all for a good reason, and we've got some great news regarding John Higgins Jr. from HSR, which we'd like to tell you about now. Of course, the last time he wasn't able to make it to the Snetterton circuit because he was on holiday, but tonight he's not able to make it to the circuit at Monza because he's been racing go-karts at what is the PFI International Circuit in the United Kingdom, the longest karting circuit in the United Kingdom, courtesy of the company that he and his father, John Higgins Sr., work for, and that is Proximo Limited. They both work as part of the insurance division, and it was the case that in the endurance race, where it was a team karting event, we saw that John Higgins Jr. was racing as part of a team consisting of multiple members, including Adam Smalley of Ginetta and Porsche Cup fame, and the team came second overall in the endurance race. On top of that as well, the race that followed after it, so there were 2 races on the calendar, so they had the endurance race, and then they had the 1-hour sprint race after it, and John Higgins Jr. finished P1 in that race, taking the win. Congratulations to him. I'm sure he's got his feet up right now with an ice cold beverage in hand or a cup of tea, depending on his preference, and he's celebrating what's been a fantastic day and getting ready to see how Team HSR get on tonight at Monza. But two major achievements there, and well, it is the case that John Higgins Jr. has been on a whole series of achievements since coming back after the mid-season break, of course, with that triplet of wins at what was the Knock Hill International Circuit, and we look forward to seeing his return in a week's time at Silverstone. But continuing down the order, John Higgins Sr. there in P5 on 237 points, only 2 points behind his son, and the pair working together to try and move their way closer and closer to the Verano Motorsport pair as the time trickles down. Andrew Holmes in P6 on 215 points, only 5 clear of Lee Horn, and then we have our first Pro-Am driver there in P8 of Ben Bennyworth, who really has started to run away with the results with that triplet of wins again at the Snetterton circuit and making it triples back to back time and time again. Can he make it happen once more today and really set the standard so high that he can't be reached? Matthew Addy in P9 and Mikey Doble in P10. Of course, Mikey Doble returning after a long hiatus, and it was absolutely brilliant to see Mikey Doble back at his best straight away, and he delivered with a perfect round and picking up all the points, now up to 158 and up into the top 10, ahead of Rob McGregor P11, Adam Delmont P12, and we haven't seen Adam Delmont for some time. We do hope he's doing well and he returns soon, because we do miss Adam Delmont. Paul Scott P13, the second of our Pro-Ams in the overall standings, ahead of John Burnham and Nigel Stott P15. And you'll be seeing Nigel Stott return to the circuit tonight. It is the case that after a break, he is back, and that's great to see. In fact, we do miss Nigel Stott, and then Mark Sykes, Matt Emmons, David Whitehouse, Thomas Delaney, and Tony Vashav complete the overall top 20. But now coming on to the specific championship stands, so the drivers' classes, we start off, of course, with our faster class of Wiz our pros, and we can see here that when you consider just the race results of in class, Jamie Dorey leading by a margin which has grown a bit since the previous round. That margin now standing at what is 42 points over Gavan Gardener. But the story is the fact that these points do not take into account drop rounds, and when you put drop rounds into effect, it is the case that Jamie Dorey is only the best part of about 6 to 9 points ahead based on rough calculations, and that means that every round is to play for Jamie Dorey. Gavan Gardener continues to maintain that consistency. He hasn't necessarily had the results he's wanted over the last couple of rounds, but the thing with Gardner is he's been able to string together those consistent performances, and that's why he's so close when drop scores come into effect, and we'll talk more about those in a week's time in round number 9. John Higgins in P3 there, John Higgins Senior that is, for those who are looking for the senior junior translation, and the senior member of the Higgins family on 322 points, ahead of Junior now, with Junior not in attendance last time out at Snetterton, but you can imagine things will switch up there when both of them are out on circuit, or indeed Junior will look to try and get as close as possible to his father, so that way they can get all the points they can for the team. Chris Daines in P5 on 295 points, still in the pursuit of a top 3 in the championship, but Snetterton's results not going his way means that he's starting to fall a little bit further back from the hunt for the top 2, but he'll still give it his all, there's no doubt about that, all the way to the finish. And then Lee Horn, Matthew Addy, Andrew Holmes, Rob McGregor and Adam Delmont completing the top 10 there, and we can see how Lee Horn and Matthew Addy started to come together, only 7 points separating the pair, with Addy having some good results at Snetterton, and Lee Horn, by comparison, not getting the results he's necessarily wanted over the last few rounds. But then again, we are at a circuit tonight which does favour Lee Horn in terms of its weather circuits he does enjoy. And then Mikey Doble there in P11 after a perfect performance, not jumping into the top 10 quite yet, but you can already see he's closed the gap to Adam Delmont down to only 10 points, and then Tony Vashav last but not least in P12. But then we come on to our Pro-Am standings, and as we look across, Ben Bennyworth here on 413 points after a near-perfect performance in terms of picking up all the points, missing out by a single set of points in terms of the pole position for the opening race, and that was taken by Matt Emmons. Emmons putting together an absolutely brilliant pole lap, but Ben Bennyworth picking up all the points and prizes in the races, all the wins plus all the fastest laps, and therefore that gap between himself and Paul Scott is only growing more and more. And I can tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, I just had it confirmed in my ear, we have Adam Delmont in attendance tonight. We'll look to him very shortly, but let's focus on our Pro-Ams. That's a bit of news that's coming very hot off the press, but meanwhile, as we can look back to our Pro-Am standings here, Bennyworth ahead of Paul Scott, and the gap between the two of them now standing in excess of 140 points, and when drop scores are counted in, that gap is still sizable, and the problem now for Paul Scott is he's running out of time to bring that gap down to the point where he can stay in the championship hunt. But instead, you can see that John Burnham, after a great set of performances at Snetterton from Burnham, he's now closed the gap to Paul Scott to only 7 points, and therefore we are starting to see a budding rivalry for P2 in the Pro-Am class. Matt Emmons in P4 there has jumped ahead of Mark Sykes after Mark Sykes showed a lot of pace in practice, but it wasn't then qualifying nor in the races, and he did have some difficult races as well, but we'll have to wait and see if Sykes can strike back tonight to get back into P4 with only 4 points between himself and Emmons. And then we have Nigel Stott, the best of the rest, in P6 and 196, 70 points clear of David Whitehouse. And Thomas Delaney, Mark Arrowsmith and Gaz will complete the top 10, with Josh Brown, Michael Crees, Colin Martin and Jamie Jenkins completing the prime standings. But I'm pleased to tell you as well that Michael Kreese is back out on circuit today. He's got time in his schedule, and we look forward to seeing the Real World Touring Car driver out on circuit going racing. But as we now look to the Teams Championship, will Next Gen Racing Orange leading at this point, getting back ahead of HSR after a strong set of performances at Snetterton, ahead by a margin of what is 33 points. But the oscillation between the two teams, that means at any point it could be HSR back on top and Next Gen Orange down in second, or indeed that gap could start to open up a little bit more again, particularly with the return of Mikey Doble to support Jamie Dorey, and with Adam Delmont in attendance tonight. Therefore, they are going to have all 3 drivers in attendance versus the 3 drivers of HSR, albeit we're not going to have Higgins Jr. out on circuit, and that will mean HSR will be running at a slight deficit in terms of numbers. But behind them, Verano Motorsport in P3, best of the rest there by only 5 points over Next Gen Racing Green, and then we have Next Gen Racing Blue in P5 on 402 points, starting to break away a little bit from prime stacking with Solo Racing again after the gap was closed up. But the P6 team now on 380 points, they've got a comfortable gap to Crest Autosport with Pebbles in P7, and then SVPMR with Next Gen down there in P8, last but not least. But coming from our standings then, what about our circuit for tonight? Well, of course, it is none other than the Monza Circuit, 9 in full in Italian as the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza, the Grand Prix layout of which we are using here. The full standard layout of 11 corners are separated by a multitude of extended straights. And this circuit, located in the town of Monza in Italy, is a circuit much loved for its ability to create classic style of racing, whereby it's all about full throttle for over 80% of the lap almost. If you're in a Formula 1 car, in touring car racing class cars, you're looking at full throttle for at least 70% of the lap, and we've got some very heavy braking zones for as our drivers run their way down the start-finish straight down towards Prima Variante at turns 1 and 2, also known as the Rettifidio chicane. They'll be coming in hot on the brakes there from top gear all the way down to first gear to make their way through turns 1 and 2. Get on the power early and they can charge their way through Curva Grande at turn number 3, also known as Curva Pisano, and as they make their way through the long right-hander completely flat out, they'll head up towards the Regia chicane or Seconda Variante at turns 4 and 5 and go heavy onto the brakes once more. Albeit a little bit more speed being carried through the second chicane, and then the circuit takes a little bit more of a dynamic in terms of making their way up towards the Lesmos of turns 6 and 7, going through Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2. We'll see that the average corner speed starts to increase a little bit more compared to our chicanes, and our drivers will be making their way through those corners in third gear for the first and perhaps second gear for the second, depending on the gearing of the car. But the critical thing is the corners open up a little bit, only for a brief period of time, and it's the long run down the back straight known as the Seraglio straight or the Curva del Seraglio, and as they make their way all the way down the curve straight up towards the Ascari chicane, it's the third and final chicane, the higher speed chicane of the trio, and they'll make their way through turns 8, 9 and 10, an absolutely ferocious left-right-left combination, while drivers want to get on the power as soon as possible on the run out to turn number 9 to go flat out through 10 and charge their way down towards the final corner of Curva Parabolica and make their way through turn number 11, a nice early apex to complete the lap and start it all over again. And thank you, of course, to Sim Racing Wiki for their circuit map as always. But just before we head trackside, let's take you through those rules once more. It is the case that this is a fixed setup series based on the pre-defined setups provided by iRacing. Indeed, we are running the standard iRacing balance of performance as it currently applies to the touring car racing class machinery. In the sprint races, the race 1 grid shall be set based on the results of qualifying. And then the race 2 grid shall be set based on results of race number 1, where whoever takes the win in race 1 starts on pole for race number 2, and we make our way down the order in fashion. And then the race 3 grid shall be a reverse grid based on the results of race 2, with the reversal position being drawn live from between 6th place and 12th place, and that will be done by myself in the commentary booth. We'll cut live to the booth and we'll do the draw live on air. But in terms of how that works then, if we draw the number 7, it means that whoever finished in first place in race number 2 will be starting 7th for the purposes of race number 3. Indeed, our 7th place finisher in race number 2 starts on pole, and those who finish 8th and further down, well, they'll be starting in those positions when they take to the grid for race number 3. And also in terms of penalties, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. But that's enough rules and regulations, that's enough updates on the standings, because whilst that's all important, what's more important, I think, is the race in action, and we make our way over to the circuit here, and as we do, well, we can see Michael Kreese making his way on around right now as he heads out to the final corner here, and as he comes charging on around to complete another warm-up practice lap running in the draft there of Leon. Indeed, we're going to see plenty of drafting from our drivers. We do have a field currently of what is there 16 drivers taken to the circuit. We may have a couple more joining. We have got John Byrne, who's just made his way into the pit lane, and in fact he's just coming out of the pit lane and heading on around. We were a little bit worried where he'd be able to make it. He was caught in a bit of a traffic jam making his way to the Monza Circuit, but he has arrived just on time to go racing, and well, it is the case that as he makes his way there through at the Regia chicane of turns 4 and 5, we look to an old face, and that is Adam Delmont. In fact, we can't look to Adam Delmont at the moment because he is not in the pit lane and he's not out on circuit. He's slightly outside the pit lane, just taking it easy, but we'll see Adam Delmont very shortly. There's no doubt about that. But a more familiar face, and at the top of the Pro Championship and indeed the overall championship, here is Jamie Dorey, the Next Gen Racing Orange driver, who, as he's mentioned time and time again, trying to be a bit more Colin Turkington in his approach in the second half of the season. Being the championship leader, he knows he doesn't have to win every single race, but in turn he just wants to get a target set of points from each and every round, which enables him to stay ahead of his pursuers, and one of his pursuers, of course, being Chris Daines. We see parked up there after completing another lap, and we see Lee Horner heading on out there of the second Lesmo, but another one of Jamie Dorey's pursuers, of course, Gavan Gardener, who parks up and makes his way to the pit lane. I think most of our drivers are making their way to the pit lane now. Well, we won't be able to catch them quite at this point in time, but we will when they make their way out of the circuit to go into qualifying. But as we get ready to go into that qualifying session, we do say hello there in the Facebook chat to both Katie Eames, who says, "Evening, Paul, it should be a good one tonight." And indeed, Katie, I think it will be. I think it's going to be a very tactical one around here. And I think we may see a couple of the old adages of Monza Turn 1. Indeed, for the uninitiated, Turn 1 at Monza, when they start from a standing start, is always a scary fault for the simple reason that you have got over 10 cars trying to go down into a single braking zone at very high speed early on cold tyres and cold brakes. And it doesn't always quite work out, particularly if you've seen a Formula 1 over the last few years. There have been quite a few incidents at turn 1, sometimes not at the start of the race, but also midway through the race. But hopefully that will not happen here, or indeed our stewards post-round will be really strict on what happens and who gets awarded a penalty as a result of it. And we also say hello out there to Darren Doty, who says, "Good evening, Paul, and good evening to you, Darren. I hope you're doing well." And also welcome back for Nigel Stock. Good to see him back. And indeed, with Nigel Stock back in attendance, the Prime driver will make sure that he is on camera for the purposes of qualifying, because we do want to see him back in full splendour. And he's just not just a name, it is the case. He is a favourite at Next Gen Racing, a much loved driver. And as we see all of our drivers making their way out of the pit lane for the purposes of qualifying here, 15 minutes, it's gloves off and go, go, go. But the difference here in qualifying compared to what we traditionally see is we're going to be seeing a lot of our drivers stay together in this qualifying session, because they will want to try and benefit off the draft of one another. But as they all head down towards turn number 1, well, some drivers have yet to make their way out of the pit lane. We see Mark Arrowsmith heading out in the Halfords Cataclean machine as he heads down towards turn number 1, as he heads into the braking zone there, running the old touring car colours, of course, as featured on Honda Civics as well, not on the FK8 generation, but more back towards what would be, if I remember correctly, the FK2 touring car generation. But as he comes out of turns 1 and 2 and heading up towards 3 here, Arrowsmith, of course, one of those drivers in the Pro class who's been putting on some great performances as of late, really battling hard for position. And as he rolls his way through turn number 3, we do look from him to a little bit further up the field, and we can see Jamie Dorey here right up towards the front, and nobody wants to be in this position unless you're looking to put in a banker lap, and that is the lead car at Monza, for the simple reason you do not have the tow that everybody else has, and therefore you can't benefit down the straightaways with regards to being able to pick up that extra 3 to 4 miles an hour of speed, particularly on the run out of the final corner all the way down towards turn number 1. But as he makes his way on down, we do look from him to Nigel Stock here, who heads on through turn number 3 in the Honda Civic Type R. And indeed, here's Nigel Stock back in splendour after missing a couple of rounds due to personal circumstances, but we're very pleased to see Stock out on circuit. And as he heads up into turns 4 and 5 here, well, that Honda looking absolutely shiny in terms of its colours, and we look forward to seeing how Stock gets on tonight. We don't have Adam Delmont, interestingly, making his way out of the pit lane at the moment. Perhaps they're trying to resolve a technical issue with the car, which would be a shame if there is an issue with the car. But as we see Stock making his way out through the first of 2 Lesbos here, we do look to what is Jamie Dorey, and look at the stack forming here in the run down towards the final corner. And well, Michael Kreese has decided he's not going to wait around. He doesn't want to think about it, so instead he heads on through. Now, will he jink his way into the pit lane here in order to throw a dummy on everyone? I don't think he's going to. In fact, I think he's going to stay out there and go for a lap. So let's ride on board here with Michael Kreese as he takes us around for the first flying lap in this qualifying session at Monza. Staying across the timeline and down towards turn number 1, and as we clear the screen of all the data and just keep the track map up for you, heading down towards turn 1, it looks a long way up into top gear, and now getting ready to go heavy on the brakes. He looks for his marker, the 150 board, comes all the way down the gearbox there in a traditional fashion, just going through the gears gradually. Through first gear he goes, rolling through turns 1 and 2, straight line in between the apexes, and then getting on the pound nice and early as he exits out and heads up towards turns 4 and 5. But before he gets there, lets the car drift over to the left-hand side, and then gradually brings it towards the apex of Curva Grande. And as he heads to the right-hander, taking a little bit of apex exit curve there as well. Don't have to, but you can choose to do so if you so desire, and then just lets the steering open up before drifting the car into the right side to break his way down to turns 4 and 5. Braking at the 100-meter board, coming down the gearbox aggressively, understanding a little bit under braking, but still bringing the car nicely together and exiting out of the second chicane, now heading up towards turns 6 and 7. As he gets ready for the braking zone here, looking for a BFX 50-meter marker, and that's the right-hand marshal post. On the right-hand side, we saw the orange mark in the gate barrier, and as he heads out of turn 6 and down towards 7, the second of the two Lesbos here, a sharper apex by comparison, and coming through in third gear, hooks up very nice. He uses the exit curve in there to give himself more width on corner exit, and therefore carries some speed down. Now heading down the Seraglio straight, or the Seraglio curve, if you will, and as he heads all the way down towards what is Ascari, where he's deciding here to do a bit of weaving, so he's not happy with this lap, and immediately just simply putting some more tyre temperature in, some sidewall temperature, but braking into Ascari, braking at the 100-meter board, clattering over the left-hand apex of turn 8, rolling the car onto the curve into turn 9, and flat out beyond the apex of 9 through 10, and now charging all the way towards turn number 11. I think backing off here a little bit and trying to set up another lap, so it's not going to be full pelt down towards the final corner here for Michael Crease, holding in fourth gear in fact, and as he heads on down, we're in fact doing that downshift there to third, and you can see the rest of the pack coming on through, but as they make the way on in, well, we do look to Ben Bennyworth, who's had Mikey Doble coming through, but a lot of our drivers already siphoning what is those lap times off of one another, and also trying to put themselves in the right place, and nobody wants to be at the front. But I think we are going to see our first fully fledged lap time come through from Ben Bennyworth here as he crosses the timeline, unless I'm mistaken. Indeed, Bennyworth is the first driver to set a legitimate time, and it was there a 2:06, but immediately Gavan Gardener and Chris Daines go much faster, and the Verano Motorsport pair in this long train, in the qualifying train, going faster by 2 seconds practically, and that shows you where they've worked together in the draft, and also they've had a lap that's not been impeded by the argy-bargy of trying to figure out where you want to be in the slipstream train. Meanwhile, Paul Scott has just decided to go on his own there, deciding to run in clear air, and in doing so takes the provisional pole at 2:03.424, and also these drivers will be burning some fuel out the car, given it's a fixed setup, so they do have a large amount of fuel which they can burn off gradually over the course of their qualifying laps. But Paul Scott deciding, you know what, I'm just going to go for it in clear air and see where the dice roll, and he may even pick up a toe if he closes up some other drivers later on. But we're wondering if it's going to make his way out into the field for qualifying, and here he is, ladies and gentlemen. Adam Delmont returns, and as he makes his way through turns 4 and 5, they're great to see Delmont back after a significant hiatus, and well, behind the wheel right now, it looks like he's all hooked up and doing well as he heads through the first of the two Lesbos. The number 77 driver is back out there and ready to go racing, and as we do look to our standings, only 4 drivers putting in laps right now. Adam Delmont on an out lap, so he's closing up to the back of the train here as he makes his way down the Seraglio straight, but as he comes charging on down, of course the challenge for all of our drivers here is picking up that right place to go for the lap, and also trying to pick your way into this order as John Burnham jumps up to P2 there on a 2:04.214, and much like Paul Scott deciding to just go for it by the lonesome and not try to use the slipstream to assist him with that banker lap, and I think a lot of drivers need to consider that, unless you're Mark Sykes, where Mark Sykes seems to have found himself a nice bit of space in the Hyundai Veloster. As he heads down towards turn number 11, you can see at the back of the long train, he'll be getting a nice long distance tow, and this will give him plenty of room in the braking zone to parabolic a curve. As you can see in the rear of the pitch there, the Verano Motorsport pair of Chris Daines and Gavan Gardener working together, staying off the back of this pack, but closing up to it little by little, and as Sykes comes out of the final corner, I think we're going to get a whole new set of lap times come pouring onto the board, and where will they all be? Well, Doble there goes provisional pole, next Jamie Dorey goes up to provisional pole, we've had Crease and Bennyworth also gone to the timing tower, Matthew Addy up there as well. Was Sykes lap counted? No, it was an invalidated lap, so he's going to have to go again. But we do see Arrowsmith jumps up to P8 here as we're heading towards the end of the first half of this qualifying session. What about the Verano Motorsport pair here of Daines and Garner? Well, they're both going on to a lap. They've got themselves set up, and then we're going to ride on board with Gavan Gardener here. And this is the difference you're going to see when you're in the draft of another driver on the qualifying lap. Now, he's got his teammate to work with here, and that's where the key thing is to work. If you have a teammate at Monza who you can use the slipstream off of, if you get too close to the teammate, but you're on a really strong lap, you can always call over the radio to say to your teammate, look, I need you to pull off your lap because I've got a very strong lap and I do not want to be impeded. And normally 9 times out of 10, unless your teammate's on an absolutely astounding lap, you may end up finding they stay right in front of you, but they typically move out of the way. But into the braking zone here for the second of the chicanes, into the reduced chicane. The difference you can see is the fact that Gardner is having to brake a little bit earlier compared to where he would like to brake, and of course that is where he's got the dirty out of the car in front. And these touring car racing class cars, they do not have too much aero package on them compared to say a GT3 machine, or indeed far cry away from a Formula 1 car, but still, when they've got a car in front and that car in front is punching a huge hole in the air in front of it, and therefore they pick up a great toe of the other driver, and well, going into those braking zones, indeed into corners. Here's the case, the car gets carried away with the extra speed, and also that dirty air in front can wash out the front end slightly. And with these cars being very prone to understeer by default, or them being front engine front wheel drive, that understeer becomes only more prevalent when you've got a wall of dirty air confronting you. As you see both of the Rhino Motorsport pair making their way through Ascari, and as they do, hooking it up very nicely. In fact, Chris Danes seemingly getting the better run from the first of the two Lesmos all the way through Ascari, and now up towards the final corner. But as they head on the charge here in the Audi RS3, of course, a car that has a reputation for being quite sensitive to tyres, and as they head down towards the braking zone, we can see that Chris Danes going in very hot by comparison, but understeering a little bit beyond the apex curve there, and it's going to cost them some time. Meanwhile, Gardner getting it hooked up very nicely, a very smooth run through the corner, and as they head to the timeline, what's it going to be for the pair as they come on through? We'll see more times come onto the timing board, and we'll Gardner across the line, and Gardner goes P2, and Danes goes P1, and well, Chris Danes there was right to push that lap to its maximum, because that was absolutely optimum at 202.273, and Gardner only 400ths off as it currently stands with 6 minutes plus the final lap left on the qualifying timer. And well, I can tell you right now, this gives you an idea of how close it is from Chris Danes' provisional pole lap of 202.273 to go down the order and see how many drivers are separated by a margin of a second. You would have to go all the way down to Michael Crees in P11 as he makes his way underneath our stationary camera there on the gantry board, heading up towards turns 4 and 5. That means we've got 11 drivers separated by a second, and most of this lap time, that lap time separation, is coming down to little individual driver tweaks to lap, and also picking up that optimum toe. And Rhino Motorsport nailing that toe and that slipstream assisted qualifying, absolutely spot on. But as time continues to wear on, we've got Rob McGregor out of the circuit. And Rob McGregor being a little bit late to qualifying compared to his peers as he heads on around on an out lap here, but he'll be going on to his first flying lap shortly in the Hyundai Elantra. But still, whilst he's late, it is the case that the HSI drivers are never late, they're never too early, they're right on time in terms of battling and finding the space. So we see Paul Scott there flashing his lights, whether he's flashing the driver ahead or trying to say thank you to Rob McGregor. Alternatively, he knows on camera, we can't quite be sure, but you can see the Rhino Motorsport pair, they're going slowly, and I think the flash of lights was to essentially let them know he's coming up towards them, and they do need to avoid pulling back on that racing line, and also flash his lights again to say thank you. But focusing on the HSR drives here of McGregor and Higgins Sr. as they make the way out through Ascari. Well, it's going to be Higgins Sr. who jumps ahead of his teammate, and I think he's going to try and offer the toe here to McGregor for the simple reason that Higgins Sr. has already put in a lap time that's put in P6, and therefore McGregor, without a time, really needs some help here in order to be able to get a time that jumps him up. And that's not to be derogatory, but given the amount of time left, I don't think McGregor's really got too much time to be able to put a banker in and then try to go for a broke. But I can tell you, he drives well going for a broke. Jamie Dorey has just got provisional pole and wears a 201.91. That is 1.5 tenths faster than Mikey Doble, and behind him, well, you can see you've got Ben Bennyworth staying very close and firm, and Bennyworth not on pole in the Pro-Am class right now. It is Mark Sykes, and when I caught up with Mark Sykes in the build-up to tonight, Sykes was saying to me he was feeling quite confident in going racing here today at Monza, and to quote him, he was saying to me, they had a good practice the other day in the pre-practice sessions that led up to tonight, but it does seem to go to pot in the race, so we'll wait to see how it plays on out. I think Mark Sykes is due for a huge set of results here today at Monza after all the misfortune he has had over the last couple of rounds, particularly at Snetterton last time out. We looked so strong in practice, and the pace just simply fell out the car in qualifying, and in the race he just simply had no luck whatsoever. If he made multiple places by avoiding incidents, there would be that one extra incident that would seem to find its way to take him off the road, and we saw that in particular in race number 1 at Snetterton, where Sykes was on course to potentially take the win in the Pro-Am class, only for it to all go horribly wrong. But as he heads there through at the second of the Lesbos, it is the case that right now Sykes really on form and on fire as he heads on down the Circuit straight. And can he take a pole position here at Monza in the Pro-Am class, where it's looking likely? And well, if Sykes can do it, this is the place to do it. And the Velocitor's not the strongest on the straights. Indeed, that accolade would go to the Hyundai Elantra with its top end speed, but still the little Velociter is flying right now, with Sykes, of course, being our sole Velociter driver here as he makes his way up through turn at number 10 and down towards 11. But as he charges all the way towards the final corner, more lap times coming in. Mark Harris Smith has just left the pit lane, as we're to understand it, to make his way onto a lap. But Rob McGregor, meanwhile, all the way down at the bottom of the time sheet, he is on a flying lap as he heads on through. But has McGregor left it too late? He's lost the toe of his teammate as well. And I would imagine to think at this point that McGregor may be feeling the pinch, as we see the Rhino Motorsport pair, they're having to swap places as they make their way onto what will very shortly be their final qualifying lap, and a bit of a change up in the order. But we've Colin McGregor to the line. It hasn't been a perfect lap for McGregor, but it's been a good one. Of course, setting all personal best because it is his first flying lap. And as he heads across that timeline, what's it going to be for the Scots as he crosses the line? It's going to be P12, where it's our lowest pro driver at the moment, as Gavan Gardener goes provisional pole on a 2:01.747. There is still time on the circuit, and they've only really got one more lap to deliver our drivers now, with the clock having less than 2 minutes remaining and the lap time here being just over 2 minutes. And will it be Gardener who takes the pole position as we see him making his way out of Retifilia, or will we see another shake-up when it's all said and done? Well, we've not got long to find out, and really one of the little surprises, Andrew Holmes. Well, we have seen Holmes qualifying well over the course of the season, and Holmes right now in P5 here, putting in a very good set of qualifying laps. And one other thing to note with Andrew Holmes is a lot of these laps have not had a significant amount of tow. He's really been trying to deliver these laps on an outright pace in the Elantra, and he is our highest placed Hyundai Elantra right now. In fact, he's quite high compared to John Higgins Sr. in the fact the distance between the two of them is 0.3 of a second. And well, Holmes showing there's a lot of life in the South Korean machine yet as he heads down towards what is the Ascari chicane. Behind him there we can see Adam Delman, and Adam Delman the only driver ahead of Rob. Well, in this case he's only got Rob McGregor behind him in the pro standings right now, but Delman back on his return, and I would imagine here getting himself all settled down back in the cockpit once again. And I don't think there's going to be too much of an emphasis from Delman on qualifying here, because in the race, if there's any incident at turn 1, we could see a safety car front, or indeed we could see drivers going multiple places. But as Delman heads his way down towards turn 11, was it going to be them and indeed all the drivers? But we're about to find out, as Lee Horn is at the head of the pack that's just about to creep onto another lap. Well, some of them will, some of them are going to miss out, and Lee Horn currently P10, and as he comes out of the final corner, he improved in subsector 2, but is there going to be much else he can improve here on the lap? As Bennyworth just behind, Lee Horn crosses the timeline there. Does he improve? He moves up to P9 temporarily. We'll have to wait to see how it all factors in. Bennyworth does not improve. Sykes behind does not improve. Jamie Dorey does not improve. Creeds does not improve. We've still got more times to come. What about Delman here as he crosses that time? Has he improved? No. Delman stays in P11. We've also got there Nigel Stock a bit further back, as we did see there for a brief moment, I believe. Well, that was, I'm not sure if that was Aaron Smith was coming through, but we did have one of our, that was Matthew Addy coming through. Paul Scott has jumped up to P7, and we do have some drivers in the pit lane. But as Stock comes on through here, he's currently the last star drives provisionally. Will it be that way when he comes to the line here as he heads on down? He's on a personal best, and as he crosses the line, how high is he going to go? He improves to P16 there, just takes Burnham down into P17, gains a place. We've still got a couple of drivers who are on laps technically, including Lee Horn, but Lee Horn's decided to abort the lap. Meanwhile, just in front, Ben Bennyworth, who's gone on to another lap. We've still got the overtime of qualifying, of course, and Bennyworth, one of a limited set of drivers in that big slipstream pack, who was able to get one more lap in. But look behind, Mikey Doble is right there, and the NXTGEN Racing driver here, as they head out of turn number 7 out of Lesbo 2, you can imagine that Doble will be thinking about dethroning Gardener off that pole position. Jamie Dorey was not able to take that pole back on his previous lap. I think Dorey's heading on us round as well on a distant toe lap. He just crept across the line, so it's going to be very close at the finish. The track's at its optimum, the tyres at their best temperature, and as the drivers come on through here, the cars will be very light on fuel, but it is a very long end to the qualifying session. I can imagine that Verano Motorsport right now, P1 for Gardener, P4 for Danes, they're going to be down in the pit lane watching those timing screens quite closely to see whether the final 4 drivers out on circuit in this lead pack are able to cause an upset in terms of their fortunes, as they all head down into the final corner as they roll the way for it. It's Doble at the head of the pack after getting ahead of Ben Bennyworth coming out of Lesmo 2, and as they head through the final corner, what's it going to be as they head to the line? Will Doble take the front row, or will it be a second row start for the Brits? He comes across the line, and is it an improvement? It's an improvement to P2. Mark Sykes jumps up to P3 at the finish, and that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. Gavan Gardener on pole for the race, but Mark Sykes P3. And speaking of the race, let's take you through that grid then in its full glory for race number 1. So as we see our drivers make their way to the grid for the first race of round 8 of the NXTCC for 2022 here today at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. Gavan Gardener takes pole position in the end by 1.5 tenths over NXTGEN Racing Orange driver of Mikey Doble. Congratulations to the Verano Motorsport driver for putting it on pole in the Audi RS3. Mark Sykes there, your pole sitter in the Pro-Am class of NXTGEN Racing Blue at P3, joined by Jamie Dorey on the second row of the grid. We then have Chris Daines, who starts off our third row for Verano Motorsport with Andrew Holmes alongside him. The privateer. They're doing well in qualifying to take P6. Then we have Paul Scott and John Higgins Sr. on row number 4. And Paul Scott, they're out qualifying Ben Bennyworth and starting off tonight the right way to try and take the fight back to Ben Bennyworth. The Pro-Am Championship leader in P9 starts off our 5th row with Lee Horn alongside in P10 for Next Gen Racing Green. Matthew Addy, Lee Horn's teammate, P11. Alongside him on the 6th row will be Adam Delman for Next Gen Racing Orange on his return. And then we see on row number 7, Rob McGregor, joined by Michael Crees. And then on row number 8, we have Mark Harrismith and Nigel Stott, the 2 Crest Autosport with Pebbles drivers. And then on the final row in P17, we have John Burnham from Prime Stacking with Solo Racing. But to be fair, whilst it didn't work out in qualifying, I don't think Burnham is going to be too phased for the simple reason he delivers in the race. But as we look from the grid then, in terms of the grid positions to the actual grid itself, we're about to go racing. 20 minutes of racing to kick off here tonight. And will it be Gavan Gardener who comes away the winner come the finish, or will there be an upset into turn number 1? We don't wish it on anyone, of course, but it can happen. But as the field is itching to go, only 20 seconds before we start to get the lights out. Who is it going to be in the run down towards turn number 1? Will it be Gardener? Will it be Mikey Doble? Can Mark Sykes get the jump on the field? Let's wait and find out. It's 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go for race number 1 here at Monza. And Gavan Gardener gets a brilliant start. Look at Lee Horn on the left of the picture. He's making a huge start on the inside as they come charging down towards turn number 1. And Gardener immediately going on the defensive in the long run. And as they head up towards the braking zone here, Doble's going to try and creep it around the outside. Andrew Holmes loses out 3 places right at the back of the picture there as they come down into the opening corner. And as they roll the way on through, it looks like everyone's making it safely through the opening 2 corners. Chris Dane side by side with Jamie Dorey. Mark Sykes losing 2 places off the start, bogging down slightly in the Veloster, but still not losing out too heavily. He's got Ben Bennyworth behind, and Ben Bennyworth has jumped up 3 places off the line in the Audi RS3. But as they charge up towards turns 4 and 5, we can see Doble here trying to go around the outside of Gardener into turn 4. And as they battle the way onto the brakes, the runner motorsport driver here is going to make that apex as wide as possible for Doble. And Doble can't come through as they all muscle their way over the sausage curbs and head down towards the first of the 2 Lesbos. But as they come in, Chris Danes up the inside here of Doble into turn number 6. They roll the way into the right-hander, and Doble gets the move done on him by Danes as they head out to the corner. And Chris Danes now trying to make another pass here, but I think more going defensive for his teammate Gavan Gardener rather than trying to find his way up into the lead of the race. But as they come out of turn number 7, it's now the run down with Sarah Clear, and a bit further back we can see Michael Crees there gaining 1 place off the start, and Andrew Holmes behind him, and John Higgins Sr. losing 7 places to Andrew Holmes losing 8 places as they head their way down towards Ascari. But as they head up towards the braking zone here, we look to the front of the field, and Chris Danes definitely right now trying to provide rear guard action there for Gavan Gardener, but Danes briefly disappearing off screen and then returning, and Doble's not going to be enjoying that. In fact, he's got a driver who seems to phase in and out of the ether as they head down towards turn 11, and I hope that's not a sign of potential disconnect coming for Chris Danes, as we'd notch that up as the equivalent of an engine blowout in terms of real world racing. As they head down towards the final corner here for the first time of asking, Danes again going defensive here and really working the team game, and look how he's making Mikey Doble have to go the long way around the houses as they come out the final corner. But now here's the big test. It's the run down towards turn 1 at full speed this time, and as they head across that timeline after 1 lap, it's Gavan Gardener who leads, followed by, oh my good lord, we're about to cut off that fault. That's Rob McGregor into the wall. What on earth has happened there? We'll take a look very shortly, but McGregor has been sent all the way to the wall in the exit Parabolica curve. But meanwhile, looking to the front of the field here, Gavan Gardener still working with Danes, who's trying to make it too wide to the runner. Motorsport drivers making that rolling roadblockers. Meanwhile, a bit further back, John Higgins Sr. going on around, and with him that is Nigel Stott, who's gone all the way into the wall. What on earth has happened here? We've got multiple incidents, and we'll have to take a look back shortly. But still, the racing presses on, and Ben Bennyworth, as he heads on through Curva Grande here at turn number 3, he's got what is there, Lee Horn alongside him, and Lee Horn trying to regain places after a difficult start as they head up towards turn number 4. And Lee Horn, in fact, gaining 4 places since the start of the race as they roll away into the braking zone this time around. Now, meanwhile, behind Paul Scott, they're also watching on as they head out of 5 and up towards the first of the 2 Lesbos at turn 6. But it has been a very oddball start, very placid start into turn number 1. But then going all the way through to lap number 2, we've had 3 major incidents already, and we'll have to try and see exactly what's happened there very shortly. But as our drivers head on through on this second lap, things are starting to settle down a little bit, although Bennyworth there was a slowdown by looks of things, had to yield the place to Paul Scott. Now we for track limits, and we believe that will be at the chicane, the second of the chicanes at the Regia chicane. But as they make the way down the Cerro straight and in towards turn number 8, we see Gavan Gardener here holding that lead position comfortably ahead of Chris Staines. Staines working with his teammate, and then Jamie Dorey has jumped ahead of Mikey Doble. Of course, Dorey and Doble both teammates. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes, really the unsung hero of the start in that P5, holding on to what is the pro pack, but he does have a little bit of company in the form of Paul Scott, who's not too far behind, only what is there 2 seconds behind Paul Scott as they make the way in towards the braking zone for turn at number 11. And Paul Scott, if he can, will try to take that win off of Mark Sykes to keep his championship ambitions alive in the Pro class. Meanwhile, for Sykes, it's all about trying to deliver and pick up a win on the board. But as they head out to the final corner and down towards lap number 3, they charge. Well, it does look as though it's calmed down a bit at the front, but I can assure you that tempers are slightly simmering right now. It is quite hot here today in Italy. And as they head down towards turn 1 with the Verano Motorsport pair here, we've got a safety car. In fact, we didn't quite pick that up, but we have had a safety car, so something has happened with regards to that major incident. We do have what is Nigel Stock in the pit lane having repair work, and we will have an opportunity now to be able to see what exactly happened on that opening lap, or the end of the opening lap, and going on to lap number 2. As we then do look back, we start off by looking at what exactly happened to Rob McGregor. So heading his way out to the corner, well, that camera angle won't do us any good, and the fact it's completely obstructed, but I think there was some contact which sent McGregor around. We will take another look. And as we look to what was Rob McGregor at the time, there was contact with Mark Arrowsmith, and McGregor turned across the front of Arrowsmith's Honda. There was the Elantra driver, and then just ricocheting off the wall. Now, as he came to a grinding halt against the barrier, what happened here between what was Higgins Sr. Oh, goodness me, and Higgins Sr. being turned across the front there, Michael Crees, and Andrew Holmes being pinballed between the 2 drivers, and then, well, Nigel Stock trying to take evasive action, just a little bit too heavy on the rear end of the car, and Nigel Stock not in any contact, but losing the rear as he took that evasive action, and it all went wrong for him. But we take a look back from Nigel Stock's perspective, and this is what he drove into. Now you'll see down the right side, that is John Higgins Sr. spinning across. Stock taking the evasive actions. Higgins Sr. tries to get the car under control, but Stock drifting onto the grass, and once you're on the grass in these heavy machines, the car just snaps on you. But that is exactly what happened then for our instance, and then you can see Andrew Holmes in the wall there. Well, what on earth happened to Andrew Holmes in all of that as well? We'll have to try and understand as we take another look back at what happened. And we look at what was Andrew Holmes at that time around. And well, from Andrew Holmes' perspective, he's making his way down the straight. He's very shortly going to have, I think, that contact with what was Michael Crees, or certainly John Higgins Sr. as he headed on down, makes his way, and there comes Higgins Sr. who was in contact with Crees, and well, Holmes in a wounded car, a major whack, and on the grass, and much like Nigel Stock, the car snapping loose, and very fortunate to have plenty of space to chuck the car into on the run through apex of turn number 2. That could have been far worse. But as we do return to our live pictures, let's take you through that order after what was 6 minutes of racing, and now drives are behind the safety car. It's Gavan Gardener who is leading after the opening 3 laps ahead of Chris Staines in P2. The Verano Motorsport pair working it very well together at the start of the race and running their way into the P1, P2 situation. Mikey Doble there in P3, a good start from him, not able to get past Staines or Gardener, but staying with them. We're then Jamie Dorey in P4. As they come through the final corner, I don't think the safety car is going in at the end of this lap. In fact, it will be the next lap as we're to understand it. Mark Sykes, P5 there, your Pro-Am leader. He started in Pro-Am pole, and he's carried on from where he left off. He's lost 2 places after qualifying P3, but he'll be happy he's in P5 and with the pack. Lee Horn behind. One of the biggest gainers at the start, gaining 4 places, Lee Horn into P6, and then Paul Scott P7 ahead of Adam Delmont P8, and then Matthew Addy P9, and Adam Delmont gaining 4 places, much like Lee Horn at the start. Matthew Addy in P9, Ben Bennyworth, a difficult start for him in P10 there, not the way he'd wanted to start his proceedings today at Monza. Michael Crees P11, of course, in that contact that we saw earlier on with John Higgins Sr. and also Andrew Holmes. John Burnham P12, Mark Arrowsmith P13, Nigel Stock P14, and these guys all in the back of the pack now behind the safety car. They've got the cars repaired and they're ready to go once again. John Higgins Sr. P15, Rob McGregor P16, and then Andrew Holmes at the back of the field P17. But I suspect come the end of this lap, the safety car will be coming on in, given the fact all of our field has caught back up. Everybody's on the lead lap, so now they're all itching to go racing. But a bit of a dramatic opening race here today at Monza so far, but indeed the drama is not over, given the fact that come the end of this lap, we'll still have about 10 minutes of racing to go. That will equate to 5 to 6 laps, and as our drivers all go ready to go racing once more, you can imagine it's all about the charge down towards turn number 1, and the pressure will be on our leader of Gavan Gardener to nail the restart, because of course he'll be able to choose when they restart once the safety car has cleared the safety car line. And for Gardener, does he go early or does he go as late as possible and try to give everybody the slip? And that's the challenge at Monza with a rolling restart from behind the safety car, is that because the restart occurs with such long straight in the run to turn number 1, you may nail that restart, but then the driver behind will just naturally close up to you because of the slipstream. But the thing he has in his favour is that Chris Danes, his teammate from Verano Motorsport, is right behind him. And as we've seen so far, Chris Danes, whilst I think Danes has had enough pace to potentially look for a move, I think Danes has also played the team game, played the second man in this conundrum, and made it so that when they go into the corners, Verano Motorsport are too wide, there's just no way through the corners, and then Mikey Doble and Jamie Dorey have to wait and watch. But as the safety car peels away, well, Gardner's going to have plenty of time to eke out a gap to the safety car, and the safety car being piloted by Gaz Williams, of course, our official next-gen racing safety car driver. He's made his way up towards the final corner already, but Gardner's waiting to restart as they head up towards turn 11. How soon will he go? Let's wait and see. Taking his time with this restart as Gavan Gardener. Before he might go on the exit of the final corner, but he's not, so I mean he's going to leave it as late as possible. And there he goes, he's gone for the restart as late as he dares as they charge their way down towards turn number 1. And as they head down towards the braking zone here, well, Matthew Addy already losing out versus Andrew Holmes. They head down towards Red Velo once again, and you can see Chris Danes there defending furiously on the inside. Mikey Doble being compacted between the two Verano Motorsport drivers, and as they all head into the braking zone. A bit further back, we can see how the crescendo effect there, the concertina effect really comes together, and Adam Delman runs a bit wide as he comes out to turn number 2. That's going to lose him quite a bit of ground. In fact, he loses 3 places for one tiny knock to the gravel. And as they head up towards turn number 3, it's side by side here between Adam Delman and Rob McGregor. Also in front, John Higgins Sr. trying to battle his way around the outside to the inside of what is John Burnham there, as the HSR drivers have got it all to do towards the back of the field. As they head down towards the braking zone for turn number 4, Delman has got there. What is Rob McGregor on his inside? But he's not giving up as they go side by side through turns 4 and 5. Out to Regina they go. John Burnham has fallen off circuit. He rejoins at the back of the field, but one mistake has cost Burnham very dearly as they head into the right-hander turn number 6. One spot, and as they come out to the point, you can see that John Higgins Sr. falling off of the back of Michael Crees by a margin of 2 seconds and really bunching the field up behind him in P10 quite significantly. Meanwhile, further up the road, that was Jamie Dorey having a brief ruddy cross moment as he makes his way down the Cerro straight. I think they're just simply being edged out a little bit onto the grass, but as they head up towards turn number 8 into a sky, they go. Mark Sykes gets in very close to Jamie Dorey, but having to stay right there. To be fair for Mark Sykes, he doesn't need to push this too hard. If he maintains the pace and keeps it sweet, he'll be able to stay clear of Paul Scott, who's 2 places behind. But I do wonder if Mark Sykes is feeling as though the pace being shown here by the drivers is a little bit too slow as they head down towards Parabolic. And a wonderful blimp shot here to give you the sense of perspective as they all head up towards the braking zone for turn number 11. And Mikey Doble looking for the move there up the inside. He can't quite find it as they head through the final quarter. Both drivers run very wide. They're out into the marbles, and Jamie Dorey's going to come through, and this is going to pull the cork out of the bottle for making moves to P2. Gavan Gardener's got an advantage of 1.8 seconds. I think he can afford to run away with this, but meanwhile now Jamie Dorey and Mark Sykes, they're trying to go on opposite ends of the straight in terms on the left and the right of your picture. But now it's a free-for-all as they charge their way down towards turn number 1 once again. Still 7.5 minutes on the clock. Dorey on the inside, Danes on the outside. Danes is going to try and outbrake the Honda driver, trying to do the one thing the Honda's best at, which is braking, and the Audi driver gets it done, and Chris Danes makes it count. Meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth off circuit, and he's going to lose places, the prime driver, to what is Crees and Scott as they head up towards turns 4 and 5. But as they head for the right-hander here at turn number 4, we can see that John Higgins Sr. trying to make it all the way round the outside through Curva Grande up towards the inside of what's the Regina chicane. But with all the battling that's going on there, it's these little moves which, whilst they're not looking too significant given the amount of slipstream running in this race, at the same time taking track position could prove pivotal later on when it really does come down to do or die on that final lap. But Higgins Sr. gaining some more ground, and meanwhile Rob McGregor not really moving up compared to his teammate as they head into Lesmo 1, behind Adam Delman staying with his rival as they come out of the corner and now heading up towards turn number 7. And as they roll into the right-hander, Adam Delman really starting to show his fangs, but I think for now he's going to have to wait on the stationary position because Rob McGregor's got the toe of Ben Bennyworth, and that's giving him the speed all the way down towards Ascari. But as they head in the long run, and we look from towards the back of the field to the front of the field, and Chris Daines continuing to defend hard here versus Dorey, Lee Horn, Mikey Doble, Mark Sykes and Paul Scott. And you can see that Garner is just running away as we ride on board the rear and the gearbox of Chris Daines' machine. And as the Danishman charges down towards turn number 11, we can see Jamie Dorey getting closer and closer, and as he almost takes our camera off the rear of the car, we look to an exterior camera, and as they head up towards turn number 11 in towards Parabolica Curve, Daines once again really proving to make that Audi so wide, and Lee Horn runs very deep into the corner, and Lee Horn's now going to be vulnerable to Mark Sykes making the move up the inside. But of course we've now got the long run, and in the drag race without any slipstream, the Honda and the Veloster are quite equal up towards top gear. But now with them both picking their partners, the slipstream behind Sykes of course has Doble, and meanwhile Horn has Jamie Dorey. And as they head down towards turn number 1, 2 by 2 they go. Well, Doble and Dorey here are not going to want to pick on one another for the simple reason they're teammates and they can't afford to fight. Meanwhile, Mark Sykes is going all in here, wants to get an overall place. In the end, I think has to back out, and Lee Horn gets on through it. Meanwhile, all going to speed, and Bennyworth there losing the rear of the car coming through the chicane. And then another bit of contact. I think that was contact with Nigel Stock, albeit there wasn't direct contact between the two drivers on camera. I think that was netcode contact, and John Higgins Sr. across the road in a spin. What on earth has happened to the duo in the fact they've both had 2 major incidents? Well, we will take a look at that very shortly, but before we do, well, Chris Daines and Mikey Doble coming together, and well, both drives off circuit there, and I think it's getting a bit over aggressive between the two of them, and I think some tempers are frying here at the Monza Circuit in race number 1, as we see Mark Sykes going slowly and relinquishing the lead of the prime class to Paul Scott, who's now to P5. And I think Sykes there with a slowdown for a track cut and one of the chicanes. He's lost out on that lead, but he's not out of the hunt yet. We've still got 4.5 minutes to go, and Paul Scott is only 1.5 seconds up the road, and Sykes still has the toe of Chris Daines. As we see in the rear of the picture, Rob McGregor going very wide, and in return Matthew Addy having to go round him alongside what is there. I do believe that's not John Burnham. I can tell that is Matthew Addy coming up through, and Nigel Stock as well as they head on down the Circular straight. But as they head up towards the braking zone, we look from them to the front of this pattern. That's Nigel Stock chasing after Michael Crees as they head for Ascari here. Once again, 4 minutes remain, but then looking a bit further ahead of them, we can see that Andrew Holmes going around the outside here of what is Mark Arrowsmith as they head up towards Parabolica Curve. But for Andrew Holmes, he's got a long way round to go in terms of braking versus the Honda driver. But he gets it done, and in fact, I think Arrowsmith there backing out, thinking he can get the return run in the run all the way down towards what is turn number 1. But if he can get it done or not will be the bigger question, as meanwhile up the road we can see that Paul Scott tried to slipstream his way past what is Lee Horn as they head across the timeline. Not long left to go in terms of race distance, and as they head down towards turn number 1, it's Scott on the inside, Lee Horn on the outside, and Paul Scott needs this win in the prime class to keep his hopes alive versus Ben Bennyworth. And as they break the way into the corner, I think Scott back it out there, recognising there's no need to push it too hard. He just needs to keep on the pace to keep ahead of Mark Sykes as they come out turns 1 and 2, and through 3 they go shortly. But as they head on through, we take a quick look back to the carnage of Ben Bennyworth, and also what happened to John Higgins Sr. only moments ago. Well, as we take a look back here, here's what happened to Ben Bennyworth under braking into the chicane. Well, at first it looked absolutely fine on the braking. There was contact there between Higgins Sr. and Michael Crees, and there was a bit of a turn, I think, from contact with what was there, Rob McGregor. Meanwhile, Higgins Sr., as he came out the corner, elbows out to Michael Crees, and the two came together, and well, Crees came off bad, but Higgins Sr. came off a lot worse, and Matthew Addy there with cat-like reflexes dodging the wayward Elantra. So that is exactly what happened there for the two drivers. Quite the knockabout, but meanwhile we see the question there from Fraser Ross in the Facebook chat about what is the point of safety car in sim racing. We'll come back and explain that very shortly. Be glad to hear you join the racing, Fraser. Meanwhile, in the YouTube chat that we say hello to Edward Latt, and we also say hello to Shane Obert, who asked what happened to Chris Daines. I think there was a bit of a coming together between Chris Daines and Mikey Doble about 2 laps ago, coming out of the Regia chicane. Elbows coming out between the two of them, both of them going to the gravel, and Chris Daines coming off the worst. So you see flashing his lights there as we're looking at the live pictures now, and they head down towards turn number 11, and as they charge on down, Daines is trying to find his way between the two next-gen racing drivers in front. He looks up the middle of the pair, and well, he's going to take one of them there as he heads through the right-hander, because to be fair to Paul Scott, I don't think Scott's positioned himself too well into this corner on the outside there, and Daines now will try to make it free wide in the run down the start-finish straight as they all go into the final lap. Oh, goodness me! And Daines in contact with Lee Horn, and Paul Scott being caught up in it. The three drivers coming together, and we've seen a number of those styles of incidents so far in race number 1, where it only takes one driver to make a brief tap with the other, and they get turned across one another. But Lee Horn, in a very heavily crippled Honda, is now trying to make his way to him. That's not going to happen, and I think that is his race done and dusted with only 1 lap to go. But meanwhile, we look up to a leader here, Gavan Gardener, who is 2.6 seconds clear after all the fuss and the incidents that have occurred, as Lee Horn has had to park it up, and I think he's going to be jumping to the pits very shortly. But Gavan Gardener right now in a very comfortable place. Meanwhile, Mikey Doble and Jamie Dorey. Well, for Jamie Dorey at this point, the question is, does he try to find his way past his teammates? We're in the Paul Scott has had to jump to the pits with the damage picked up as well. But it has been a very difficult round number 1, and I wouldn't be surprised there's going to be a bit of frustration down in the paddock after this one. But we see there Doble switching places with Dorey, and I think that is to give Dorey the extra points in the championship. Teamwork making the dream work here, much like we saw for Napa Racing, of course, at the resumption of the BTCC at 2022 season. But as we see here, our next gen orange drivers making their way down the Seraglio straight. Behind them, Chris Daines, who flashes lights right now, trying to get into the head of the drivers and heading all the way down towards what is a Ascari here. Well, I think Daines won't be too happy at the contact with Doble earlier on, and perhaps that's why he's flashing his lights in earnest. But as they head up towards turns 8 through to 10, I can tell there won't be a safety car now, given we've cleared the 20 minutes. It will be the checker flag the next time they come around, and Adam Delmont, well, he may have started towards the back, but he's gained 7 places since the start, and he's avoided all the trouble on his return to the series. Delmont right now is going to bring himself a top 5 finish, but as they head into the final corner, we look to our leader here at the foreground of the camera, and as he rolls his way through the final corner, he's had a pleasant race. His teammate has worked as the rear guard, but Gardner's had to put the pedal to the metal, and as he heads to the line, it's Toronto Motorsports' Gavan Gardener from the United Kingdom who will take the win in race number 1 overall here at Monza, ahead of Jamie Dorey in P2, Mikey Doble P3, and it'll be Chris Daines P4, Adam Delmont in P5, and then Mark Sykes in a late turnaround takes the win here in the Prime class in race number 1 in P6 overall. Andrew Holmes P7, Mark Arrowsmith P8, Matthew Addy P9, Nigel Stock P10, Arrowsmith and Stock completing the Prime podium, Rob McGregor P11, John Burnham P12, Michael Creed P13, and those are all the drivers who will finish on the lead lap. But what a superb race, albeit there were some very near the mark moments, and I think there might be a word to tell drivers to calm down in the paddock between races 1 and 2. But indeed, Mark Sykes, I think, will be absolutely over the moon. I think he will feel as though he had thrown it all away after that slowdown coming out of what was the Regia chicane about 3 laps to go. But in the end, Paul Scott, in that contact that we saw with Lee Horn, and also what was there, some of the other drivers around them, and in the end, Mark Sykes was able to pick up the place he lost and deliver that win. And as we do look to the scenic view here, and what a lovely day it is at the Italian circuit, let's take you through those race results, subject to, I think, what will be quite a few stewards' inquiries. So after one race so far in round number 8 of the NXTCC here at Monza today, Gavan Gardener taking the win by 2.1 seconds over Jamie Dorey in P2, and then Mikey Doble completing the podium. Next Gen Racing Orange putting 2 drivers on the podium, P2, P3, but it was Toronto Motorsports Gardener who took the top prize there on the top step. Chris Daines in P4, ahead of Adam Delmont in P5, completing the top 5. And again, an absolutely brilliant drive from Delmont on his return to just make his way through the order and finish inside the top 5. Mark Sykes there taking that P6, and I do believe one of a limited number of wins, if not his maiden win in this series in the Prime class. Andrew Holmes P7, Mark Arrowsmith P8, coming home second in the Prime class. Matthew Addy P9, and then Nigel Stock on his return, making it a return to the podium immediately with P3 in the Prime class, P10 overall for Crest Autosport with Pebbles. Best of the rest outside the top top 10. Rob McGregor there for HSR, not quite on the pace in this race, but looking to build on that going into the next one. John Burnham P12, Michael Creeds P13, Paul Scott there P14, and Paul Scott marking the start of our drives. We finished a lap down or more due to incidents and damage to the car. Paul Scott P14, Lee Horn P15, John Higgins Senior P16, and then Ben Bennyworth, last but not least, our championship leader in the Pro-Am class there, not having a great start to his proceedings, P17 in the standings. But that's only one race, of course, ladies and gentlemen, and we will be back in approximately what will be about 5 minutes time for the build up to sprint race number 2. Indeed, we've seen elbows out already at Monza. Are we going to see all that and more in race number 2? I think we can count on it. We'll be back very soon. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the continuation of round 8 of the NXTCC for 2022, as hosted on iRacing and brought to you today from the Autodromo Nacional de Monza, or Monza in short. We are of course running at the Grand Prix layout and having had quite the tremendous race number 1, where we saw it started off all quite calm, but from lap 2 onwards it really started to kick off the battles and the instance left, right and centre, but plenty of battling up towards the front and in the midfield as well. The racing was fantastic, and we look forward to another 20 minutes of racing coming up in what is approximately 4 minutes time, as our drivers head on around here for their final warm-up session before they head into race number 2. Some big talking points and indeed conversation points of what was race number 1, and in particular firstly HSR not quite having the race they wanted compared to how it started when they were making their way up through the field, but both Higgins Senior and Rob McGregor being caught up in a number of instances which cost them quite dearly, and on top of that as well, the car not having the pace they so desire in that Hyundai Elantra, and it was quite a warm circuit as well, which may have been a major contributing factor, but still they'll be looking to bounce back in race number 2, you could be sure of it. Other people to talk about, or other major talking points: Adam Delman having a brilliant return to the series, having started in P12, avoiding all the incidents and steering clear of trouble and making his way up into P5. A superb drive from the pro driver, and we look forward to seeing whether the next gen racing orange driver is able to make it 2 top 5s out of 2, or could he go even further and make his way onto the podium come the end of race number 2. Well, all that and more he'll have to figure out as he makes his way into 20 minutes of racing action. But again, his story, a great one, and also another great story to be considered, the return of Nigel Stock, who's currently down in the pit lane, and we will try to see if we can get a closer shot of Nigel Stock's car, and there he is, parked up the Crest Autosport with Pebbles Honda Civic Type R driver, and well, Nigel Stock having a superb return with a 10th place overall, but more importantly for him, a 3rd place come the end of the race in the Pro-Am class, and now can he make it 2 Pro-Am podiums back-to-back on his return after 2 rounds out? I think he can. Perhaps he could even go a bit further. But speaking of Prams and who was on the podium, we also saw that Mark Sykes made his way to take the win in the Pro-Am class. A great drive from him, albeit he's not currently in the pit lane. He's waiting off circuit. But then also the fact that Gavan Gardener was able to take the win in the Pro class, working with his teammate Chris Daines. And Chris Daines finishing P4 in the end, elbowed out in the run through what was the Regia chicane in a battle between himself and Mikey Doble. Both of them going door to door, and indeed a bit more than that, we reckon, coming through turns 4 and 5. But Gavan Gardener really happy, I think, with the fact it wasn't just about Chris Daines acting as rear guard, but also needed to deliver those laps time and time again, and Gardener coming away with the win, and of course that giving him the opportunity to close down to the championship leader of Jamie Dorey. And of course Jamie Dorey just there in the back of the picture, coming into prominence now on our camera as he heads all the way down towards turn number 1. And Jamie Dorey, I don't think we'll be too worried about what's played out over the course of the first race, but it will be on the back of his mind that he can't afford to let Gardener take all the spoils today, because if he does, then he'll start to lose ground. And when I did catch up with Dorey in the build-up to tonight, he was saying to me that with regards to the Monza Circuit, he was looking forward to going racing here, but he was a little bit worried about the Honda struggling for straight line speed. But with drop rounds in effect, and knowing he's only 9 points ahead of Gavan Gardener, as we talked about much earlier on in the show, he was happy the fact that he does have both his teammates making their way back to the circuit of Delman and also Doble, so therefore the trio could work together to take on the Verano Motorsport pair of Chris Daines and Gavan Gardener. But we'll have to wait and see, of course, whether in races 2 and 3, Doble was able to use teamwork with his teammate Dorey to be able to get them back right up the front. Indeed, Jamie Dorey to take those wins after they swapped places at the end of race number 1. So Dorey picked up that 2nd place to essentially have the damage limited with Gavan Gardener's win. And well, can Dorey get ahead of Gardner? That will be the big challenge. But I'm certain he will be going all in for it. He won't feel as though he can't do it. It's whether he's got the speed on the straights in the toe to be able to take the fight to the Audi RS3. Because of course, one of the Honda's weaknesses is that straight line speed. It just does not pick up the speed as rapidly as its peers. But as we see him making his way down into Ascari, we look to Matthew Addy, a driver who had to do a lot of dodging and avoiding over the course of race number 1. I think he'll feel as though he had a bit more pace in the car, the pro driver, but he wasn't given the opportunity to deploy it. But hopefully in this race, it'll be a little bit less of instance around him and a bit more the ability for him to focus his attention on the asphalt and be able to deliver those laps. Well, we're about to find out if that's the way it's going to play out. For the checker flag comes out on this final warm-up session for race number 2, and our drivers will very shortly be teleported over to the grid, and we'll get ready to go racing once again. So as the grid is now being formed for what is race number 2, let's take you through that grid as it stands. So, starting on pole, the winner, of course, of race number 1, Gavan Gardener for Rhino Motorsport, who has Jamie Dorey for company alongside him for Next Gen Racing Orange. Mikey Doble and Chris Daines, the two fierce rivals and competitors, make up the second row, with Adam Delman and Mark Sykes on the third row. Mark Sykes, your winner there in the Pro-Am class in P6, taking that win in race number 1. Can he make it 2 out of 2? Andrew Holmes, P7, with Mark Arrowsmith alongside of the fourth row in P8, and watch out for Arrowsmith. Here's the case he's been keeping it smart and consistent, but he hasn't quite had the pace to go hunting after Sykes. Matthew Addy at P9 started off our fifth row with Nigel Stock alongside in P10, and then Rob McGregor and John Burnham on that sixth row. The HSR driver looking to try and get into the top 10 for sure going into this race. John Burnham, prime stacker with solo racing, starting P12, and behind him he will have P13, P14, Michael Crees and Paul Scott, who make up row number 7. And on the penultimate row, we have Next Gen Racing Green's Lee Horn, joined by John Higgins Sr. from HSR, who'll be looking to turn things around. But that is the gridding process complete with Ben Bennyworth at P17. We await the lights. And it's lights out, away we go once again here for race number 2 at Monza, as Gavan Gardener gets a good start compared to Jamie Dorey, and as they head their way down towards turn number 1, well, the comparison here is that Dorey has not hooked up the start compared to Gardner, and as they head into the braking, so you can see Doble defending hard here versus Chris Daines under braking, wanting to make sure the fellow Verano Motorsport driver cannot get through, but look at this, 3 wide between what is Addy, Crees and Mark Sykes, and Sykes there being given the elbow all the way to the outside, and with 2 wheels in the gravel there, tries to rejoin but finds a little bit more of Nigel Stock's rear end, and he's not able to rejoin the way he wanted to as they head through turn number 3, but Sykes finally now able to get himself up to speed. But we look from there up to the front of the field as they head into the braking zone for turns 4 and 5, up into Regia they go. Daines has gone ahead, Doble trying to outbrake the Audi driver, but the Audi driver getting it done. Further back, Matthew Addy up the inside as Michael Crees drifts under brake, and they're loose through the car, and Andrew Holmes goes across the sausage curve in there, outbraking himself into the chicane and then bringing it back together. Well, Crees will have a slowdown, I suspect, for cutting across the chicane despite a very stylish entry, and as they make the way with the first 2 Lesbos, you can see already how Lee Horn now trying to gain some ground as they head into Lesbo 2, but behind Mark Sykes here battling side by side with Nigel Stock in the battle for his P4 in the Pro-Am class, P12 overall, and as they head out of Lesbo and down towards what is the Sarah Clear Straight and all the way towards Ascari, Sykes has the back out, and he's got Ben Bennyworth for close company behind him, but as they head on down, I think Bennyworth here will need to try and find his way through as soon as possible, because right now he is losing out versus Paul Scott. Although I say that, Paul Scott with a lot of damage on the front end of the car, and Paul Scott dropping down the field like a star. I think there's a slowdown for Paul Scott in fact, and that's why he's losing the places left, right and centre. But as they come out of Ascari, we do look to Gavan Gardener, your race leader here, who's got Jamie Dorey looking up the inside into the final corner, and as they head into the right-hander, Jamie Dorey puts up the inside and tries to take the lead of the race. But of course the downside for him now is he's got a drag race all the way out the final corner down towards turn number 1, and as they charge on down, well, it's Dorey who leads currently, but I don't think it's going to be for long before Gavan Gardener takes a repeat in the run towards 1. But as they come across that time, it's Dorey ahead of Gardner, then Chris Daines P3, followed by Mikey Doble P4. We have Adam Delman P5, but as we focus here on the battle for the 2 leaders, it's side by side heading down towards the braking zone. Dorey on the left, Gardner on the right, and as they head on heavy onto the brakes, we can see Dorey here trying to outbrake his rival, but goes a bit deep, and Gardner cuts back and finds himself back on the outside through 2. Well, Gardner had the right idea, but couldn't make it work. But Chris Daines has got ahead of Doble, and now Adam Delman behind is staying with this lead pack. Then P6, the second pack, Mark Arrowsmith is your leader in the Pro-Am class, with Michael Crees behind him, after Crees had that very spectacular moment at the second chicane last time around. But as they've got Matthew Addy close behind him, P8, we've got Lee Horn in P9, and then Mark Sykes best the rest, P10 ahead of Nigel Stock, and then Ben Bennyworth P12, John Higgins Sr. P13, Andrew Holmes P14, Rob McGregor P15, and then Paul Scott and John Burnham P16, P17, and you can see Paul Scott and John Burnham right at the back of this group, but it's really hotting up as well in the battle for further down the order. But meanwhile at the front of the order, off camera, well, you can see Mikey Doble looking for the move versus Gavan Gardener. In fact, Chris Daines has got ahead of Gardner. There's been a bit of swap of places, and Delmont now is looking fierce as they head out of the second of 2 Lesbos and make the way down Sarah Clear. But we ride on board here with Adam Delman, who's looking for that opportunity to try and get himself onto the podium here. I think race number 1 was just about getting himself back in the rhythm, and he's done that very effectively, and now he's going to try and find his way past some of the fastest drivers on the grid. But to be fair, Adam Delman, we know, is no slouch when he puts his mind to it, and a very fast driver as well, very smart driver in terms of strategy. But the only strategy really here at Monza is to know when to charge on the toe, and as they head all the way towards turn number 11, Delman right now staying close, but not able to find the move here. And to be fair, I think he just wants to stay in the slipstream train for the majority of the race and think about the move in the final 5 minutes when everything will really start to kick off, or as we like to say, it'll be handbags at dawn. But as they make the way out to turn number 11 here, you see Doble getting the better run out the corner. Gardener going a little bit deep, but in return now Doble doesn't really have the toe fortitude. You can see Doble trying to pull the car across Gardener to tuck on him, but he can't quite do it in the fact that he still has Gardener keeping his nose on him there to try and get the draft of Danes. And as they head down towards the braking zone, with Danes covering off Doble initially, but I think Mikey Doble here might also be finding, indeed it's revealed there, that Jamie Dorey right in front. In fact, Chris Danes is going to go around the outside to inside through turns 1 and 2, and Chris Danes takes the lead of the race as they make the way out of turn 2 and now up towards Curva Grande. But as they come on through here, we look a little bit further back, and well, Lee Horn has got it all wrong at the chicane. What's happened to Lee Horn? Whereas on a battle on the braking into turn 1 versus Mark Sykes, and Lee Horn just missing his braking point, carrying too much speed in and snapping the car off the circuit there to keep it safe and avoid contact with everyone, and Mark Sykes picking up the position accordingly. But that's what happened. But as we look back up towards the leaders, well, as they come out of Regia here, back to live pictures we go, and Jamie Dorey on the inside of Chris Danes as they head into turn 6. Through Lesbo 1 they go, and well, Jamie Dorey there keeping his nose in, but Danes carrying the momentum on through, and of course it's a tricky corner to battle on the inside into Lesbo 1, given the fact you can't put your foot down, which is what you want to do on corner exit, given the width of the corner and exit compared to an entry. And as they make the way down Seraglio, Danes holds on. Meanwhile, Doble there staying in P3. I think Doble's objective at this point is to keep Gardner at bay, and if Jamie Dorey can get ahead of Danes, try and get through with him. But I think the Next Gen Racing orange driver here is really going to have to play number 2, much like Danes has been playing number 2 for Gardener in race number 1. But as they head for Ascari here, side by side they go, and as they exit on out Doble, they're getting a little bit of oversteel contact. I'm not sure there was contact, but meanwhile Michael Creed's leading this second pack, and he has got the company of Aerosmith, Sarkis and Bennyworth as they charge down towards turn number 11. But as they come on through, you can see that it's not just about the front 5, it's also about the rest of the field here. As we've got a mad scramble between Lee Horn, Higgins Senior, and with Andrew Holmes. It's really wide, but Holmes backs out there, deciding to pull himself out of the equation as Higgins Senior goes all the way around the outside. But a little bit of a drift down the rear end of the car oversteering on corner exit, and as they make the way out to turn 11 and down to start finish straight, Rob McGregor comes on through to pick up where his teammate has left off as they head across that timeline to go on to another lap. Fantastic racing here, but as we see them making the way on down, we can see there's also a little bit of a bump draft there. Andrew Holmes pushing Lee Horn along, giving Lee Horn a bit of the hurry up command, and meanwhile Mark Aerosmith, oh my good lord, and Aerosmith losing the rear of the car and sends Crees to the wall as they make the way into the braking zone for turn 1. And well, Ben Bennyworth there missing a major moment alongside Mark Sykes as well, but that was very hairy for both of the drivers, and it could have gone so much more worse than that. To be fair, damage on both cars, there's no doubt about it, but it could have really been a race ender for the pair of them. We'll take a look very shortly at what exactly happened. But meanwhile, we look up to the front of the field, and once again, Dorey versus Danes as they head through Regia and up towards the first of the 2 Lesbos they go, and Dorey on the inside. We saw this is a deja vu from the previous lap, but this time Dorey really trying to hold position, but again, Danes just knows the confidence, but Gavan Gardener loses the rear of the car, coming out of the first of the 2 Lesbos and sends it to the wall, and well, that's not what Gardener wants. And now, well, I think for Jamie Dorey at this point, there'll be a brief smile, because that's not the way he wants to win, seeing his main rival have a major instant. But at the same time as well, now the pressure's off for Dorey in the fact that P2 does not look as unappetizing anymore as they make the way all the way down Seraglio. But looking back up towards the leaders, we can see Adam Delman finds his way past Mikey Doble. To be fair, I think they're swapping places, given their teammates are just designed to switch things up for now and give Delman an opportunity to run their P3, and perhaps he can unlock something versus Danes that the others can't as they head down towards turn number 11. But meanwhile, off circuit, we've had Matthew Addy, who's just rejoined, coming out of Ascari. So we have got incidents happening left, right and centre once again, albeit nothing tragic at the moment or major, but still a couple of race enders almost for some drivers, or at least race upsetters. And for Gavan Gardener in particular, as we see Paul Scott here looking up the inside of John Higgins Senior for P11. He goes all into parabolic curve, and as they make the way on through, Michael Crees, they're running wide. I think the damage that he picked up on the car earlier from that contact with Aerosmith has really upset the balance of the car, and as they head down, start, finish straight, have we got the safety car on out? I'm not 100% sure. I don't think we have. In fact, no, the safety car is still in the pit lane, so the safety car has not been sent out on circuit to be, but we have not had a major obstruction or a huge incident as of yet, and Gavan Gardener has come into the pits to take repair work, and that's going to put him right out of the hunting unless there is a safety car. Meanwhile, John Burnham here battling up the inside of John Higgins Sr. as well, and the Prime Stack and Solar Racing driver starting to creep his way back up the order after losing places at the start. But as they head on through Curva Grande, we look up to our leaders here, and here they are as they head underneath the gantry. But it's Danes on the right, Dorey on the left, behind them Delmont and Doble, and as they make the way all the way down towards turn number 4 on the brakes, Chris Danes takes the lead, and you can imagine now for the 111 driver from Verano Motors, what his objective is to win, and he's just got to try and break away. And if we know there's one thing Chris Danes is stellar at in any car he picks, when he's in the zone, he will disappear off into distance, and I can imagine that Danes right now will be going hell for leather and trying to break away. Meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth, who has found his way past Mark Sykes, leads in the Prime class here in P5 overall. Sykes behind him, but both drivers staying well within reaching distance of one another. And I can imagine that Mark Sykes will be thinking about trying to come back a little bit later. As, oh my goodness, and Lee Horn into the wall and coming across the circuit, and that is only going to cause more worry for Nigel Stock, who again finds himself having to take a base of action. Also, Higgins Sr. Well, my goodness, multiple drivers there all having to take evasive action. And further up the road, my goodness, that's Crees and Higgins Sr. coming into contact. And, well, we can see coming through, that is Matthew Addy and Mark Arrowsmith. But what on earth has happened there? Higgins Sr.'s had to jump to the pits. So has Lee Horn. We've got a lot to unpick, and we've still got some other items to unpick from the contact between Crees and what was Arrowsmith on about 3 laps ago. As our leaders come on through, we do start to take a look back at what exactly happened, starting with Arrowsmith versus Crees in the run to turn 1. Well, in fact, that was not the incident. We see him return into the circuit there. We try and wind back a little bit earlier on to exactly what happened. And here it was under braking then, so I think Arrowsmith's just going to come in too hot. In fact, connecting there slightly with the front right panel of what was Mark Sykes' car. So I think that's actually what triggered it off, plus the braking zone in effect, but really coming together the trio. So that was one incident which we have taken a look back at, as we do in fact have a safety car out on circuit. Now, safety car was called at the last moment as our drivers came on down, but that does give us an opportunity to analyse what else has happened in terms of those incidents. And the next incident we take a look at was the one involving Gavan Gardener getting it wrong coming out to the Lesmo 1. As he's making his way up towards the corner, so you're going to see Gardner on the right on the inside. Now, was there contact? I don't think so for Gavan Gardener. I think he just simply lost the rear end. We do take another look back at that incident from the perspective of what was Mikey Doble here, because he was really in the viewing position for it, and I think there was there a tap there? It's not 100% sure. We didn't hear the grind of metal between the two cars. There may have been a little bit of a tap, but I think that would not have been enough to push around. I think Garner there also just losing the rear slightly, but again, the stewards will have a better view of that one. But as we return to live pictures, we can see all our drivers stacking up behind what is the safety car, and we look down the instance even more in terms of what happened in the run down Seraglio. And, well, it was a better way of putting it, bedlam in the run down Seraglio, and I think a few drivers will have nightmares after what happened. And the big question is, what exactly happened? Well, let's take a look back and try to find on out. Starting with Lee Horn. So I think this is where it all kicked off. So Lee Horn involved in contact there. I think that was Rob McGregor, and coming across the circuit. Now Nigel stopped taking evasive action. It snaps the car loose, and then Higgins Sr. having to take evasive action in return, and he rejoins, and not seeing Michael Crees was on his inside, and the two cars become mangled metal coming together, and you can see Matthew Addy there literally taking it as slow as possible. And meanwhile, it was the case that Mark Harris was just charged on through there and picking up the pieces, but that was an absolutely nasty incident. And we take another look back at it, and this was the onboard from Higgins Sr. So you'll see here as he came on out, there's Lee Horn going across the road, and then he just simply passes that and thinks, okay, I'm clear. And then Nigel stopped trying to bring it back together, hits the wall, Higgins Sr. creeps into the wall, and as he rejoins there, well, Crees has just come on through, and the two drivers from that point onwards have just been caught up in it. And thank goodness, at the end of the day, nobody's hurting than that other than a bit of virtual kart and virtual pride. But you can imagine that both drivers would not have been happy with the way that played on out whatsoever. But as we do return to live pictures, those are all the incidents that have happened since the last time we took a look back, and we saw there the incident between what was Mark Arrowsmith and Michael Crees into turn 1, which also involved Mark Sykes. There's a brief bit of contact there, and we'll have to wait to see how the stewards look at that one post-race. Well, I don't think there was any malice meant between the three of them. Close racing, but in the end, Aerosmith literally careening like a bullet into turn number 1, just having no retardation in the car with the contact of the Sykes and also with Grease. We also saw the instant involving Gavan Gardener coming out of what was Lesmo 1. We're not sure if there was contact with Mikey Doble. We couldn't quite get it from the camera, but it did look as though there was perhaps a tiny tap, but I think also Gardener was starting to go around when the tap occurred, and we also saw there the double set of incidents, the triplet of incidents coming down through circle. We saw Lee Horn losing it coming out of Lesmo 1, which then triggered off an after effect of what was Nigel Stock coming and careening off circuit and hitting the walls, and then John Higgins Sr. trying to dodge the way with Nigel Stock, and in the end taking a Michael Crees with him as they went underneath the bridge. But indeed, we could see there Shane Abbott saying poor Nigel in the YouTube chat, and that's all he's tried to dodge and lost it. And indeed, I think for Nigel Stock, it's just not been his return today, but still, he's got his head down, he's catching back up to the field, he's back on the lead lap, and he's not too far away. And we can also see Katie Eames down the Facebook chat saying, crikey, this race is full of drama. Poor Creasy getting caught up in some too. Indeed, well, we do know that touring car is not without its drama, whether it's in the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship or indeed the Real World British Touring Car Championship. We've seen drama year in, year out in the real equivalent as well, and we are seeing it here today at Monza, or Italian Thruxton as we're also referring to it. But as our drivers now get themselves back up to speed, we can see all the field coming together. The only driver who will effectively now be a lap down on the field after everything that's happened is Michael Crees, but everybody else has been able to catch back up onto the lead lap. And for Chris Daines now, he will have the Goliath task of holding off Adam Delmont. And for Daines, well, I don't think he's had the opportunity in this series to race against Delmont in the touring car racing machinery. I think they managed to have the circuit in previous Next Gen Racing series, albeit in the LMP2 class, but in a very different style of car. We'll have to wait to see whether Delmont, on his return after a 5th place in race number 1, well, he's on course potentially for a podium in race number 2, but could he even make it a win? And behind Jamie Dorey and Mikey Doble, Delmont's got literally the whole team behind him, in the fact that Doble and Dorey, they're both part of the Next Gen Racing Orange team. But then Ben Bennyworth, as we see the safety car peeling on away, well, he's in the lead of the Prime class in P5, but he's got Mark Sykes immediately behind him, and Sykes would love to make it 2 out of 2, but we now wait for Chris Daines to take us away racing again. And in fact, I already think that Daines has gone there as they make the way up towards the final corner. I think Daines has gone early, deciding to try and get the jump on the field with the safety car heading through the final corner. And he's played this really well as Daines as they head through turn number 11. Meanwhile, further back, you can see there that Matthew Addy losing out versus Aerosmith, and Gavan Gardener trying to pick his way around John Burnham. Although I say that, Aerosmith going very slow, and Aerosmith losing it into the wall and coming across the circuit there on the restart. That's cold tyres, has caught out the Crystal Sporting Pebbles driver. But meanwhile, after nailing the restart, Daines is already 7/10 clear. And look at this, it's the scramble of Next Gen Racing Orange. The trio of Delmont, Dorey and Doble are all trying to close back on up here, and they've got to pick who's going to be the lead driver and who's going to push from behind. As meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth has a great restart as well and breaks away from Mark Sykes, and Sykes has got more pressure behind now from Andrew Holmes. He's got the ability to put pressure on from being behind Ben Bennyworth as they head through Curva Grande. We've only got 3 minutes left plus the final lap, of course. And as the time continues to tick down here with an extended safety car, it is the case now that all of our drivers got it all to do. This is a mini sprint, if you will, to the finish of race number 2. And as they head up towards the Regia chicane, everybody lying astern for the time being. Although I say that, Nigel Stock immediately going back on the offensive here, and he's going on the offensive versus Michael Crees, who is a lap down, and Crees they're taking to the escape road. But meanwhile, we look to Paul Scott as Mark Sykes has picked up a slowdown for track limits at the Regia chicane, and that will mean that he's going to lose out P2 in class. He's now down to P8. Paul Scott has come through, and Paul Scott will now have his sights potentially. So we've got a car off there, and that's Mikey Doble getting it wrong, and that's a very rare case of Mikey Doble. You never see him go off circuit unless he's absolutely hounding the car around circuit, and you can see that Ben Bennyworth having to slam on the emergency brakes almost, with Doble being a bit slower, and I don't think Doble's going to let Bennyworth go at all. He wants to hold on to that position. Meanwhile, further back, that is Nigel Stock trying to put pressure on Rob McGregor here in the battle for P14 as Michael Crees has let the pair go, and Stock trying to get as close as possible as they roll their way out of Ascari and up towards Parabolica Curve. But you can see the long sweeping train of cars And Mark Sykes in particular has got the pressure of Gavan Gardener behind. And Gardener, of course, your winner in race number 1. Now P9, looking to get back into P8 here to bring himself as high up the order, of course, to be eligible to have that potential pole position or a high placement for the reverse grid of race number 3. And as they come out of the final corner, well, Sykes has got the cutback. We know that Audi very strong on the straights, and as they head across the timeline, well, it's going to be Gardner and Sykes all the way in the battle for P8 down towards the braking zone for turn number 1. Sykes will be on the inside, and meanwhile Gardner will be on the outside. It's Verano Motorsport versus Next Gen Racing Blue, and onto the brakes they shortly go. They hit the 150 metre wall. You can see Sykes on the brakes earlier. The front of the car slams down into the ground, and Gardner by comparison goes round the outside there, taking his braking point at about 15 metres later, and Gardner now up into P8. But as they come out of the corner, we've got Crees and Arrowsmith in the pit, of course. Arrowsmith with that whack to the wall coming out of Parabolica curve, and meanwhile Michael Crees being the lap down. I think he may have boxed, deciding there's not really much left in terms of potential overtaking opportunities, and he'll get himself set for the next race. But meanwhile up front, I can tell you one driver right now who's not having an easy life of it. Chris Daines, the Danishman here from Verano Motorsport. He leads, but he only leads by 3/10 as they head into what is Lesmo 1, and I believe this is the final lap, given they've got less than a minute to go, and we've got half the lap still remaining. And can Daines hold off Dorey, as Delman is now behind Dorey? I think Dorey has been given the position for P2 to give him the best possible opportunities, as we see there in the rear of the picture. Ben Bennyworth losing the rear coming out of Lesmo 2, pushing it a bit too hard onto the gravel, but no loss of momentum there, albeit Andrew Holmes is right behind him. And then Mark Sykes still under pressure to get back past Gavan Gardener and hunt down Paul Scott. But he'll be on the prime podium if it finishes as they stand, as they head into Ascari. But no moves really shaping up now as they make the way through the final few corners. And as we do look to our leaders here as they head all the way down and around, you can see that Chris Daines weaving a little bit on the straight, cutting to the inside here to break the distant toe. Dorey just simply staying on the racing line. And I think Dorey now hedging his bets that P2 is more than enough for as they make the way into the final corner here. 20 minutes is complete. The checker flag will wait them as they come on through. And as they make the way out to the final corner, it's going to be a drag race to the line. But Daines is ahead for the time being. The checker flag's about to wave. And despite the pressure from Jamie Dorey, I think Chris Daines has just about done it as he takes the win for Verano Motorsport ahead of Jamie Dorey and Adam Delman. And it's Mikey Doble P4. Ben Bennyworth makes it another win in his cards with regards to the Prime Class P5 overall. Andrew Holmes P6, Paul Scott P7, P2 in the Prime Class, Gavan Gardener P8, and Mark Sykes P9, third place in the Prime Class. Congratulations to him. And also John Burnham there, P5 in the Prime Class, but wrapping up the top 10 ahead of Matthew Addy, Lee Horn, John Higgins Senior P13, Nigel Stott P14, Rob McGregor P15, and well, those are all your finishers on the lead lap. But what a race. And in the end, well, it wasn't to be for Gavan Gardener, but Chris Daines pulling off a win, which could be critical in the team's championship for Verano Motorsport, and also will just take the edge of a Jamie Dorey's ability to gain points on Gardner. Mark Sykes not able to close up in the end after losing out with that slowdown coming out of Regia, but still a third place at the P9. That puts him firmly in contention for a potential reverse grid pole. But looking from our drivers to the scenic view, it is the case we now take you through those results subject to any stewards' inquiries. And after race number 2, then here are the results. It is the case in race number 2 of round 8 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here today at Monza. Chris Daines taking that win in the end by 0.06 of a second over the Next Gen Racing orange pair of Jamie Dorey and Adam Delman. Mikey Doble in P4 there ahead of Ben Bennyworth, your Pro-Am winner. Ben Bennyworth back to winning ways after losing out in race number 1. Andrew Holmes P6 there, a great drive for Andrew Holmes, and he'll be looking to wrap up on another top 5 in the Pro Class. There's no doubt about that. With Paul Scott P7, second place in the Pro Class, and it does feel as though it's a little bit business as usual in this race. Bennyworth ahead of Paul Scott, and then the rest that follow. But Gavan Gardener P8, not his day after that spin coming out of Lesmo 1. But Mark Sykes P9 there, third place in the Pro Class, and you can imagine for Sykes, he'll be salivating at the prospect of taking the fight to Scott and Bennyworth in the final race. John Burnham P10, Matthew Addy the best dressed in P11, Lee Horn P12, John Higgins Senior P13, Nigel Stott P14, and Rob McGregor, the last star drivers to finish on the lead lap, and then Mark Arrowsmith and Michael Crees P16, P17, both finishing 2 laps down with their separate retirements. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, those are the results for race number 2, and we now have to cut to the commentary booth for the reverse grid draw for the build up to race number 3. So as we do cut to the commentary booth here, and I hope you're all doing well, enjoying the racing so far. It is the case, as always, we have our proverbial lottery bowl or a lottery dish. Within here are 3 instances of each of the numbers 6 through to 12. So we have 21 tickets in here, 3 of each number, and I'll very shortly be closing my eyes, shuffling the bowl and enjoying the number. And of course, we're hoping it's not a 6 or a 9 because we have seen those numbers more than any other, particularly number 6. But last time, if I remember correctly, it was the number 10. In fact, no, it was the number 7. And perhaps we'll see the 10 or 11 today because they haven't come up too much. In fact, 11's never come up and neither has 12. As we do the shuffle here with my eyes closed, and of course we had 1 fall out the bowl. We're going to pop that back in the bowl and give it another mini reshuffle. We now make the draw. And I think we've got one. Yep, we have indeed. And so, reverse grid poll is going to go to... It's going to go to P8. Well, I believe that's the 3rd time this season we have, well, in fact, the 2nd time this season we've seen P8, but P8 will be on pole for the purposes of race number 3, and that means it will be Gavan Gardener who takes pole position. Well, I think right now he will be rubbing his hands together and thinking he's had great fortune after a difficult race number 2, but it's Gavan Gardener on pole, and alongside him on that front row will be Paul Scott, and Paul Scott will also be looking at this and thinking this is a prime opportunity for him to take a win here at Monza. Will that be the way it plays out, however? You'll have to stay tuned. We'll be back in approximately 5 to 10 minutes to bring you all the build-up and then the race in action for race number 3 tonight. We'll see you shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as we return then for the build-up to race number 3, our final race here today at the Monza Circuit in Italy for round 8 of the NXTCC 2022. We may be running about 15 minutes later than our planned schedule, but at the same time, whilst we are running late, we never have to wait too long before more racing action comes on around the corner. And indeed, what a fantastic pair of races we've had so far tonight. Race number 1, of course, interrupted by a major incident, and then we saw plenty of elbows out action at the front and in the middle of the field. And in race number 2, well, it all kicked off very early on. A couple of major incidents, and then a safety car which brought it all down in terms of pace before a charge to the finish. And, well, the key thing is we have had 2 different winners in 2 races across our 2 classes, and if that's not enough twos in a single sentence, I don't know how many more you want, but will we see 3 winners in 3 races across our 2 classes? Of course, our winners in race number 1 were Mark Sykes in the Pro-Am class and Gavan Gardener in the Pro class. In race number 2, it was Chris Daines in the Pro class and what was Ben Bennyworth in the Pro-Am class. And could we see it all change up in the final race? Well, we're going to have to wait and find out. We're not long away from finding out. We've only 2.5 minutes before they make the way to the grid, but of course now we have a reverse grid in place, and as per the number draw, it was the number 8, and therefore whilst he had a disappointing race number 2, Gavan Gardener has inherited pole position through it. And also on top of that, well, it will be one of those situations where Mark Sykes was not able to benefit given that he finished P9, but one driver who has benefited massively from finishing P7 was Paul Scott, who starts 2nd place and is on that front row. Now, one of the things we have really seen around here as well is how the different teams are trying to work together in order to be able to essentially set themselves up for success. We saw in race number 1, Verano Motorsport proving the rolling roadblock technique to work very well, where Chris Daines was acting as the rear guard, but always putting the car on the inside and inconveniently on the inside of a corner for the drivers behind, preventing drivers from being able to do a lunge or get on the power nice and early on corner exit, because they tried to cut back or Gavan Gardener, they would find Chris Daines is right there. In race number 2, we saw it was all about the push and pull, whereby teams, and particularly NXTGEN Racing Orange, were using little bum drafts off one another. The trio of Delman, Dorey and Doble, and that just runs off the tongue with the 3 Ds, but the trio are using the bum draft off of one another in order to be able to chase down Chris Daines, but it wasn't quite effective enough in the end, and the safety car really broke up their rhythm. But now as we make our way into the next race, well, could it be the case that Doble started a bit further back? Will he be able to jump his way up the order rapidly? And that's one thing that we do know Doble is very strong at, his ability to be able to cut through the field in the reverse grid race of race number 3. Jamie Dorey, I should say, no slouch in that regard either, and does come through the field quite rapidly, whereas some of the other drivers are a little bit more gradual in doing so and really play the safety car. But when Mikey Doble is concerned, you normally find that by the end of the first lap, he's already halved that delta to the lead, for the simple reason he's come through the order like a knife through hot butter. But, well, whilst the knife sounds a bit dangerous, he doesn't do it dangerously. He comes through the order like a feather in terms of the touch on the wheel. But will he be able to do that here at Monza, given the fact that this circuit's not your traditional circuit for overtaking? It's a much more tricky circuit in terms of the slipstream, and also you have to be very bold on the brakes. Michael Creed's crossing the line there, coming to the end of what will be his final full lap in this warm-up session. Well, Creed's not having the race he wanted in race number 2. And race number 1 not necessarily going his way, and he'll be hoping that he can end on a high here in race number 3. But will he be able to do so? That'll be the big challenge as he heads on out of turn number 2 and gets himself set for the final run of Monza. But as we do look to what is there, Rob McGregor heading on down towards Ascari, Rob McGregor as well, the HSI outfit of himself, and Higgins Senior tonight, with John Higgins Jr. not in attendance as we mentioned earlier after that fantastic performance at the PFI International Karting Circuit with Proxima, the team there taking to the circuit. Well, Rob McGregor doing everything he can to try and make up for lost time in races 1 and 2. But as we transition into race number 3, let's take you through that grid one last time. So they line up on the grid as follows for race number 3 of round 8 at Monza today. Gavan Gardener taking pole position there, reverse grid pole for Verano Motorsport, with Paul Scott alongside him for NXTGEN Racing Blue. Andrew Holmes will be starting at P3, starting off our second row, joined by Ben Bennyworth from Prime Stacking with Solo Racing. Then Mikey Doble and Jamie Dorey are on the third row, the 2 NXTGEN Racing Orange drivers. They'll try to work together as early as possible to make their way up through the order, with Chris Daines and Mark Sykes on the fourth row, the Pro-Am driver there looking to make the charge. There's no doubt about that. John Burnham starts P9, joined by Matthew Addy P10, and then Lee Horn and John Higgins Senior on the 6th row. Behind them on what is row number 7. We have Nigel Stott and Rob McGregor, with Mark Aerosmith and Michael Kreese making up our final row. And I do believe we are missing a driver on this grid. I'm not 100% sure who it is, but we have lost somebody in the process. We'll try and ascertain who that is shortly. But only 16 drivers taken to the grid here for our final race of today. And now we get ready to go racing. The gridding process is complete, and we await the lights.
Green, green, green.
And it's lights out. Away we go. They've had race number 3 here at Monza as immediately Gavan Gardener tries to get a good run on Paul Scott. But as they head all the way down towards turn number 1, you see that Paul Scott not having the launch by comparison with Gardener. Gardener very safely getting away to the lead. But look at Ben Bennyworth here trying to cut his way up the inside early. But Paul Scott making sure he's not phased by Bennyworth as they come through the opening corner. And as we look to the blimp camera there, you can see everybody stacking up. We've got a car turned already. And I believe that is Michael. No, that's not Michael Kreese. That's Higgins Senior, who has been turned as they make the way through. But then that is the HSR drive, the other HSR of Rob McGregor being turned by Michael Kreese. Well, now that is not a happy moment for HSR. Both cars out and down through the order over the opening 2 corners. And, well, I don't think that's the way they wanted it to go. They will not be too pleased. As meanwhile, Jamie Dorey here on the outside trying to defend versus Ben Bennyworth, who's trying to come back into a corner exit. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, will Paul Scott, Mikey Doble and Gavan Gardener go 3 wide into Lesmo 1. And, well, surely you can't go 3 wide into the corner. They're going to do it, however. And in the end, Gardner falls back a little bit. Paul Scott goes all the way around the outside of Mikey Doble, jumps up into P2. But Paul Scott here firing on all cylinders and making his way up through the order very rapidly indeed as they head down Sarah Clear. But as they charge on down, further back, Chris Dane's getting a good start as well. Lightning off the grid as always. And up to P5 as they head on down Sarah Cleo. But now here comes the point where all our drivers start to cipher position. And you can see Mikey Doble and Gavan Gardener there battling for that P1. Doble into lead with what is Paul Scott losing that. He's picked up a slowdown on corner exit, in fact, and he's dropped all the way back to what is P6. And it's now Ben Bennyworth who leads in the Pro class in P5 as they head down towards turn number 11. But as they charge their way on down, we can see that Mikey Doble holding on the outside there, hoping that he can outbreak Gardner. And he's got Jamie Dorey and his teammate coming up behind him here to get into the fight. But Chris Danes is going with Dorey. So it's 2 NXTGEN Racing Orange drivers versus 2 Verano Motorsport drivers as they come to the end of lap number 1. And Dorey going a bit wide. Indeed, multiple drivers going wide, using the runoff space there. They're only allowed to do it to an extent, but not too far. But after 1 lap, it's Mikey Doble who leads ahead of Gavan Gardener P2, Chris Danes P3, Jamie Dorey P4, then Ben Bennyworth in P5, your pro leader, who's just ahead of Paul Scott. We then got Andrew Holmes P7, Lee Horn P8, Matthew Addy P9, Nigel Stott P10, and John Burnham best of the rest here as they head down towards turn number 1 once again as they head into the braking zone. Look at this from Lee Horn, trying to battle his way out the inside of Matthew Addy into Red Video, and as they come through the right into left, I don't think Horn's going to be able to get it done, and instead, in fact, he is able to get it done because Matthew Addy just gets a load of wheel spin coming out of the corner and can't get the power down. Meanwhile, in the battle for the lead as they head through the long right-hander, Gavan Gardener here taking the inside line through Cover Grande, but as they make the way up towards what is turn number 4, up towards Regia, you can see Gardner on the left, Doble on the right, Dorey's pushing Doble forward, and as they head into the braking zone here, well, Doble's coming through, with Dorey giving him a little bit of a love tap from behind, and now they make the way up towards turn number 6 into Lesmo 1, and as they head into the right-hander, you can see that Chris Dane's now trying to do the same back here into Lesmo 1, but the change here is Dorey locks up on the rear wheels there, and as they head through the right-hander, slides his way through Lesmo, and it's the case as he heads into Lesmo 2, he's now got Andrew Holmes trying to look up the inside, but Holmes has to back out there. In backing out, he stacks up the field. It causes a concertina effect, and as they make the way down Sarah Clear and up towards Ascari this time around, well, Andrew Holmes has got a lot of company, and it's a lot of programs who are looking for overall positions. As they make the way up towards the Ascari corner here, we say hello to Jan Barth in the Twitch chat there. I hope you're doing well, Jan. But as we can see here, Andrew Holmes hold off Ben Bennyworth, but Paul Scott going around the outside. 2 wide for Ascari here. You can do it. Paul Scott on the sausage curbs, and as he makes swan, oh my good lord, and coming across the screen. Well, Paul Scott's got it wrong. We cut away briefly, and well, we come back to Paul Scott, and it's all gone wrong for him and Mark Aerosmith. And that other car there was Nigel Stock, who was into the wall coming across our camera. What on earth has happened there? We'll have to find out very shortly, but it has not gone right for any of them. Meanwhile, up front, whilst all that's happening further behind, we can see here that Mikey Doble Well, as he heads down towards turn number 1, Doble feeling confident right now. With a little bit of weaving on the straight, but as they head all the way down, I think there's going to be a safety car up the road. Indeed, safety cars coming out of the pit lane, and well, for that instant, you could completely understand that was an absolute horror show of a moment, and the racing is paused as Mikey Doble brings out behind the safety car here, and we get a brief breather. And indeed, our driver's involved in that instant. Well, that was something else there. It all seemed to kick off between Paul Scott and what was at the time Ben Bennyworth, and then Nigel Stock just got it completely wrong, and we will find out about that and everything else shortly. We start off, however, by taking a look back at what happened to John Higgins Sr. and Rob McGregor on the opening lap. Well, this was in the run down towards turn number 1, and focus on the HSR car, the one with the blue and the orange stripe, and you'll see that Higgins Sr. on the inside here. Now, what went wrong? He was concertinaed, and then Crees tapped right into the back of Higgins Sr. and turned him completely around. Then Rob McGregor on corner exit, getting the power down and turned the front across of Crees, and I think there, well, Crees right at the epicenter of it all. Well, I don't think HSR will be too pleased there with the prime driver. As we come back to live pictures, we also then take a look back to what happened only moments ago. Those absolutely tragic incidents for Paul Scott, Mark Arrowsmith, and also Nigel Stock. And we start off by taking a look at what happened to Paul Scott. Well, this was in the run to Ascari. So Paul Scott battling side by side with Ben Bennyworth here, and this is where you'll see the car hits one of the sausage curves on the turn 9 apex, and then Paul Scott just straight lines on and then comes straight back across the path. He's got no control of the car at that point, and Mark Arrowsmith just an innocent bystander in all of the mix. And we try to take a look from Mark Arrowsmith's perspective here, how he saw the instant occur while coming into the corner. Now, he won't have seen what's about to happen until now. You see Paul Scott comes out slightly, but he's more focused, I think, on Nigel Stock and then powering on through. There's Paul Scott, the whack to the tyre barrier, and then the car just comes straight across the circuit. And Arrowsmith, to be fair, I don't think knew what to do at that point other than to try and drive on through. But as we return to the pictures, well, I don't think our safety car's going to be putting away just yet, given the fact we've got a number of drivers who are still in the pits being prepared and are a lap down. But that does give us an opportunity to see what on earth happened to Nigel Stock in all of that, because he was involved in an incident of his own as we take a look back. Will make its way into the corner, so coming on through here, looks like a traditional run, and there was a tap there from Michael Crees on the rear of Stock, and that sent the car away. I think there was also a bit of netco contact there with one of the drivers just in front of him, and that is what spurred everything off. But Nigel Stock in the end, well, going so horribly wrong for him today on his return. And as we look from him to Mikey Doble here, we can see now back with the live pictures, 7 minutes into the 20 minutes of racing. We are going to have quite the reduced race number 3. And to be fair, we've had safety cars in all 3 races today. We're consistent in that regard, as we do say hello there to DJ Rice83 in the Twitch chat. I hope you're doing well, DJ. And, well, absolutely shocked there at the instance that happened. I think it has all scared a lot of us, to be fair, how big a whack those drives went through. But I'm pleased to tell you that Paul Scott is making his way back on around circuit now. He has had repairs done to the car, and indeed the same for Nigel Stock and also for Mark Arrowsmith. In fact, Arrowsmith at the back of this group and bringing the car on from. We've got Rob McGregor making his way on around as well. You can see that on the circuit map. P14, 15 and 16 making their way through Ascari and Seraglio currently, so they should be able to catch up to the field or be a bit closer to the field when we do resume racing. But with all of our drivers now back out on circuit, I do wonder whether we are going to see the safety car in this lap or whether we will get one more lap behind the safety car. But as they come on around, we do look to our leaders here, and well, the story so far since the start of this race before the safety car, Mikey Doble in the end getting ahead of Gavan Gardener, albeit with the interference of what was Paul Scott, who really went for it at the start of the race. But of course the prime driver has lost out significantly in intervening events after that, and Mikey Doble now has the pressure on him because his teammate of Jamie Dorey is back in P4, and between the two NXTGEN Racing Orange teammates are their rivals of Verona Motorsport. Gardener ahead of Danes, P2, P3, and then Andrew Holmes in P5. And I think Holmes will be privately a little bit happy about the fact we're behind the safety car, because for him this resets what has become a very tricky situation for the privateer in the Elantra, in the fact that he had Ben Bennyworth, Lee Horner, and what was at the time Paul Scott really closing up behind him. But now it's going to reset, and he may have an opportunity to go hunting after an overall or at least a class podium In fact, it's all pro drivers ahead of the pro driver there from P5 to P1, so he's going to be going for both an overall and a class podium when we do get back underway with the racing. Now, we still do have what is P14 through to 16, a bit further back, and they will be trying to catch up as soon as humanly possible. But as we see our drivers making the way through Ascari, will we see the safety car peel on off? Not yet, no. Or if it is going to peel off, then Mikey Doble's leaving it late to start backing the field up. But you can see that weaving from side to side, tried to get some sidewall temperature into the tyre, and as they head on through, and Doble staying quite close to the safety car as they make the way into the final corner. The safety car, in fact, is going, I think, and Mikey Doble just staying with the safety car. Well, I think this is going to cause a bit of frustration for everyone behind, unless the safety car is coming on in, and Mikey Doble has gone. Now, I'm not sure about how that's going to be interpreted by drivers. I think Doble's, in fact, lifting off a little bit and yielding from that restart, now bringing himself back up to speed. A bit of a knock there between Gardner and Doble as well. I think Doble recognised he went too soon, and therefore giving the time back that he gained, which is very fair of the next generation orange driver, and that means that Danes is into lead there in very odd circumstances. They head up into turn one, but Jamie Dorey immediately trying to go on the offensive, and Doble tucks back in P4, and behind, where we can see him, Mark Sykes being passed by John Higgins Sr. into turn one as they come out to the opening chicane, and Aaron Smith with them. But meanwhile, well, with everything that's happening, Lee Horn gaining places at the detriment of Bennyworth and Holmes, and Lee Horn up to P5 as they come through turn number 3. But as they make the way up towards 4 and 5 now, onto the brakes they go very shortly here, and you can see already Gavan Gardener looking at the inside of his teammate in the battle for the lead, and Crees coming in hot on the brakes here versus Holmes, side by side through the corner. There's contact between the two, and there Crees made to go a bit wide, and Andrew Holmes made to take the sausage curb and jumping over it. But as they head through turn number 6 there, and well, I would agree with you there, as we see Crees getting a bit round the brake into the car, cutting away from the rear end into Lesbo 1. He keeps it together on circuit, and Matthew Addy comes on through, and well, Shane Abbott says, I'm so confused what happened for the restart. I'm with you on that, Shane. I think there was a little bit of confusion. I think what happened was Mikey Doble stayed with the safety car as it started to speed up, and the rest of the field were perhaps aware of the fact. Indeed, I think everyone was told that the safety car would be in, but Mikey Doble had gone with the safety car when he should have been back in the field up to give the safety car space to make the way to the safety car entry lines for the pit, and that's what led to all of what happened, the confusion. But in return, Doble did give back the time he gained from going so early, and effectively going before the safety car had reached the entry line. So therefore, that's how it's all wrapped up, and the confusion has now been averted, hopefully. But as we return to focusing on what's happening here, it is the case that we do see Addy under pressure from Crees as they make the way through turn number 11. Addy getting ahead, but Crees not giving up here, and Michael Crees enjoyed his strongest race of the evening, albeit I think there's a bit of a black cloud hanging over him with regards to the contact with the HSR drivers in particular on the opening 2 corners. But as they head across the timeline here, Crees looking up the inside of Addy here towards turn number 1. It's going to be a drag race between the Honda type bars, and as they head all the way through, you can see Andrew Holmes here getting a double draft, and then really coming on strong here in the Elantra. He's going to be tucked in behind Crees, who comes him off and has to lift off. Meanwhile, behind Higgins Sr. comes in like a missile up the inside of John Burnham, and credit to Higgins Sr. He got that stop to the last minute, and John Burnham I don't think saw that coming as they make the way on out. But as they head all the way through turn number 3 and head up towards what is turns 4 and 5, we look from them to the race leader here of Chris Danes, who continues to hold the lead as they head down towards turns 4 and 5 in towards Regia. We've still got what is 7.5 minutes on the clock plus the final lap. Of Danes at this point, well, I think on his mind he would ideally like to swap places with Gardner to give Gardner the win and give him as close an opportunity to close up to Jamie Dorey in the championship standings as possible. But at the same time, as we see Holmes here up the inside of what is Matthew Addy into turn number 6 and coming out of the corner and down towards 7 they go as Holmes goes onto the brakes here. He's going to hold the position nice and firm and get the job done. Comfortably does it, and as they make the way on out, if you're wondering who we're missing, by the way, it is Adam Delmont, who did not take to the grid for the purposes of race number 3. We've had that confirmed in our ear. Adam Delmont, who was looking really strong, to be fair, after race number 2, but Delmont not in attendance, and that was the question there from Katie Eames, still trying to figure out which driver is missing, and also echoing the sentiment in the Facebook chat, much like in the YouTube chat, about the confusion on the restart behind the safety car. It's unfortunate Delmont not able to make it, and I do believe there was an issue with the car, which meant they couldn't get it back out onto the grid for race number number 3. Well, we're happy to see Delmont return for 2 races, that's certain. I hope he's back for the remainder of the season. But meanwhile, Mark Sykes here trying to look for the move versus what is John Burnham into turn number 11 and on to the brakes they go. Sykes up the inside here and Burnham not fighting it too hard, but of course that Audi will have the run around the outside and all the way down the start finish straight. And as they make the way on through and up towards turn 1 they go. 6 minutes on the clock and still 3 more laps to be turned here in race conditions. And as they head on down, well, Sykes still side by side here with Burnham. They're battling for P11 overall, what is 3rd place in the prime class. And Sykes would love to make it another podium, but can he? As meanwhile in front, Higgins Senior trying to get the move done here on Matthew Addy for P9. Was effectively P7 in the Pro Class. He gets it done up the inside, round the outside through turns 1 and 2. And Higgins Senior making more ground here, and the car seems to come alive. Meanwhile, looking in the battle for P2, Gavan Gardener here under pressure from Mikey Doble and Jamie Dorey. Chris Daines is breaking away meanwhile as they head up towards turn number 4. And as they head into the reduced chicane, well, Lee Horn also staying in the mix here for NXTGEN Racing Green, the sister outfit to NXTGEN Racing Orange. Well, he'll be battling for his own team points and also for his Drivers' Championship points, and looking potentially here, Lee Horn, a top 3 finish as they make the way through Lesbo 1 and up towards Lesbo 2. But you can see in the long train, we've also got Ben Bennyworth, your Pro-Am leader here, running away from the rest of the field and staying with the top 5 of the P6 driver as they head out of Lesbo 2 and down the Cerro straight. Andrew Holmes behind them, and then Michael Crees, followed by John Higgins Senior and Matthew Addy to complete the top 10, but still further behind. We can see here Mark Sykes with a bit of a slowdown, I think, being applied, and indeed it's a slowdown penalty being taken by the Englishman as he lets Aaron Smith and John Burnham go. Further back we are hearing it is the case that Rob McGregor has got ahead of Nigel Stock, and well, not quite sure how that's happened, but it has happened further down the order. Both the drivers not quite on the pace compared to the rest of the field. As our drivers coming on around right now, we can see there Mark Arrowsmith now having an opportunity to go hunting after his own podium in the Pro-Am class, hunting after John Burnham. But looking further up the order, we look to Lee Horn here, who holding on to P5 at the moment, has Ben Bennyworth close behind. I think he'll want to keep Bennyworth behind him, but he'll also be hoping that Bennyworth will give him some breathing room, but I don't think Bennyworth's going to give him any of that as we ride on board here with Ben Bennyworth, who straight lines it all the way down. There's Lee Horn on your right. You can see him just breathing, he fades out a camera shot, and it's going to be a battle on the brakes here in the long run down. But as we look to the exterior cameras here, they make the way past the stationary camera halfway down the straight, and as they headed towards the braking zone, you can see Chris Daines at the front of the picture, literally forming the rolling roadblock there with Gavan Gardener, but in return as Gardener taps Mikey Doble and sends Doble sideways. But to be fair, I think Gardener there keeping his throttle in to make sure that Doble could then get the car turned back the right way. I think Doble will be frustrated at that first, but then grateful that Gardener helped him right the car on corner exit. You can see that Gavan Gardener in P2, and I think for Daines right now, it's too hot a topic to try and give the place to Gardener. He's just got to go and give Gardener the draft as Jamie Dorey now looking for the move up the inside here into turn 4. He's on the inside. There's a bit of elbows out there from Jamie Dorey, and as they make the way through turns 4 and 5, Gardener drops to P3, and it's the start of the domino effect here as they make the way into turn 6. And the fact that Gardener's going to drop places like dominoes fall on the table will hopefully not for him. In the fact he's lost 1 place. He's also been in contact with Mikey Doble, who's behind Lee Horn, and you can see that Lee Horn has now got the pressure of perhaps the fastest man on the grid chasing after them as they head all the way down Cerro, and that is of course debatable. We've seen Mikey Doble, Jamie Dorey, and also Chris Daines all extremely fast at different circuits, and there's nothing between them. But as they head on down now, you can imagine that Mikey Doble will be digging deep and trying to cut his way through. Meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth in P7 finds himself caught up behind. Where's Andrew Holmes? We're letting Holmes through there up into P6. And Bennyworth just playing the game of winning the Pro-Am class and not worrying about overall position. He doesn't want to get caught up in the fights. He's got Michael Crees just behind him, and Crees P2 in the Pro-Am class right now. Would love to take a win here at Monza today. There's no doubt about that. But as they head down towards turn number 11, you can see Mikey Doble there taking a look on the inside versus Lee Horn. Mates about the inside. Lee Horn gives him the space, and I think Horn as well looking to try and come back in the run towards turn number 1. So as they come out the corner, the white flag is waving. Barry Flag is waving the flag, and as they make the way down towards turn number 1, it is the case now. There's only 1 more lap to go, and who is going to be a winner come the end of it, we will wait and see. But as they all head on down in a long straight line, it's about who's going to peel on out first, who's going to make the move. And you can see there Gardener and Dorey. Well, Dorey goes defensive. Gardener tries to look around the outside, no way through. Meanwhile, Lee Horn stays behind. Further back, John Burnham up the inside here of Matthew Addy. He gains the place, or does he, as Addy's able to get the inside into turn number 2. would they roll the way through? Mark Arrowsmith as well here, trying to follow Addy through. Mark Sykes also pursuing, and of course for Arrowsmith and Sykes, they're battling with Burnham for P3 in class as they head through Curva Grande here for the final time today. And as they come through the long right hand, well, Arrowsmith has got more to worry about in terms of rear guard action. He has forward facing action as Addy's in the way, and you see Mark Sykes here flashes lights trying to get into the heads of the drivers in front as they head heavy onto the brakes. But Arrowsmith defends here, and Burnham goes deep as Addy comes on through, and that's a three-way fight for P3 in the prime class here. They've got nobody between them and John Burnham right now to work it absolutely like clockwork as they make the way through the Lesbos and head up towards Seraglio. Meanwhile, further up the road, I can tell you that Lee Horn's had an off. He's dropped behind Gavan Gardener as they make the way out of Lesbo 2, and as they head down the Seraglio straight, where it's released Jamie Dorey and Chris Daines, with Mikey Doble coming up, but he's now 1 second of a Jamie Dorey. And as they head on down with the top two heading into Ascari, meanwhile Doble defending versus Garner, who's trying to gain the place back. A bit of contact between the two of them, but it looks like both of them has made it through the corner. Andrew Holmes in P5, and as they make the way through, you can see Ben Bennyworth unsettled there behind Lee Horn. He'll be hoping he doesn't make a mistake now, because he won't want Creed's getting too close. Meanwhile, Burnham's still ahead of Sykes, and Arrowsmith, Sykes has got ahead of Arrowsmith in the rear of the picture, but focusing on the foreground now, it's Dorey versus Daines into the final corner, and as they make the way into braking, well, Daines is going to have the advantage initially, but can Dorey hold it all the way around the outside here? The Honda's got the grip, but the Audi's got the power, and as they make the way to the timeline, it's going to be incredibly close as they come towards the checker flag. The flag waves, but who's going to take the win? And it's going to be, I think the contact there was Dorey across the front, but I'm not 100% sure. Daines and Dorey crossing the line there, P1, P2. Meanwhile, Mikey Doble, P3, with the uncertainty over who took the win exactly. Andrew Holmes, P4, Gavan Gardener, P5, Lee Horn, P6, Ben Bennyworth, P7, taking the prime win, and then John Higgins Sr., P8, ahead of Michael Crees, taking second place in the prime class, P9, Matthew Addy, P10, and then John Burnham completing the Pro-Am podium there in P11 with a P3 in class. Mark Sykes, P12, Mark Arrowsmith, P13, Paul Scott, P14. Rob McGrail will come through soon to take away his P15, but we're not sure. We're going to have to take a look back at what happened between Daines and Dorey at the line, because it says Daines and our time tower took the win, but I think it may have been the other way round. McGregor P15, and then Nigel Stock very shortly will complete the lead lap finishers in P16, last but not least, as he crosses the line. Well, it has been an absolutely dramatic end to the racing at the checker flag, but as we do take a look at the checker flag, we take a look back at what exactly happened in the run through the final couple of corners, and was the two drivers came together here. Well, hopefully we get a good perspective. Now, it was Dorey in front, but then as they came together, Dorey turned across the line, and well, I think if Daines has been credited with the win on the timing tower, I think it will most likely, through post-race shooting, be taken away, because that's not the way you want to end the race for either of them. But I think it was Dorey who took the win just as he was turned through, and Daines P2. But that is an absolutely difficult one to call. But thankfully, it's not me in the shooting booth. I'm just in the commentary booth. And with that thought in mind, let's take a look at those provisional race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. Well, after our third race today in round number 8 of the NXTCC for 2022, Chris Daines listed as the winner there on the timing tower, but we do believe it will have been Jamie Dorey through the contact, or if not, I think there's going to be quite a case for that to be reversed afterwards. But either way we play it, Chris Daines and Jamie Dorey up there, P1, P2, with Mikey Doble at P3, and then Andrew Holmes P4, just off the podium there, but battling hard to try and get onto the podium behind Doble. Gavan Gardener P5, Lee Horn P6, and Ben Bennyworth taking another win. 2 wins out of 3 today in the Prime class at Monza, playing a very strategic race to finish P7 ahead of John Higgins Sr. P8, Michael Creed's P9 taking second place in the Prime class, and then Matthew Addy completing the top 10. John Burnham, best rest in P11, making it a third place in the Prime class, and congratulations to Burnham. 2 podiums today. He'll be pleased with that. Mark Sykes in P12, Mark Arrowsmith P13, Paul Scott P14, Robert McGregor P15, Nigel Stock P16, and then, of course, Adam Delman not making his way to the grid for race number 3. He won't be classified, but he is our effective 17th finisher, albeit a did not start. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now the case that we're going to take a brief breather before we make our way to the interview room for post-round interviews for our selected drivers. Don't go anywhere. Given how fiery it's been today, I'm sure we're going to have some quite hot interviews and you won't want to miss them. We'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're about to get underway with our post-round interviews. And sorry for the delay there. We just decided to give our drivers a little bit more time in order to cool off because tempers did get a bit frayed today at Monza, as I'm sure you'll all appreciate. But that does happen in the world of touring car. And, well, if you've not been following touring car where tempers have not been getting frayed, then I don't think it's probably touring car. Because we've seen throughout the years, especially back in the 90s with the super touring car era, modern standards, touring car can get very heated. And, well, I like to think about I'm going for first is one of the greatest classics where those tempers do get absolutely fiery. But with our drivers having had the opportunity to cool off, we've got 4 different drivers and we've got 2 pros and 2 primes, and we're going to be started off with John Higgins Sr., who hasn't had the strongest of days at Monza, it must be said. Race number 1 in particular stands out as perhaps a bit of a difficult day, but on the flip side of the coin, race number 3 it was going the right way. And as he joins me in the interview room, John, not quite the day you wanted today at the Monza Circuit with a P16 in race 1, a P13 in race 2, and then a P8 in race number 3. But was it at the same time one of those days where it looked as though the car just wasn't going there, particularly in qualifying? It looked as though the car just didn't have the pace that you wanted it to have.
Completely disagree with that. The car had loads of pace tonight, Paul. We just never really got it going. The car really struggles off the start-finish line at the start. I've mapped the clutch in tonight to try and combat that. And it's just not happening. And okay, you need a drafting partner around Monza. Everybody knows that. Rob was late to the party. Junior's obviously not here. So you're on the back foot to start with. But listen, you try and qualify the best you can and race the best you can. And if anybody's watched this, listen, I could say lots of stuff tonight, which I'm really gonna bite my tongue, because I don't think it's right for me to call out some people who do this professionally. But yeah, some of that stuff that went on tonight. I said last week, if everybody had the game head on, then that would have been probably the best spectacle of this season. We've had people jump into the racing tonight that haven't supported the whole championship. They may have paid the money to get into it, but they haven't supported it. And some people have dropped in tonight and just have no respect for people that have done the whole thing. And I'm talking generally here because there's a lot of chat and I'm listening to a lot of stuff before I come in here. I'm pretty upset myself. I thought we were in for a really good night, to try and keep it close. The damage and some of the moves and some of the thought process behind some of the driving tonight, that's just incredible. And listen, it's not gone the way we wanted. It's fine. We'll go to Silverstone next week, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of debates and loads of forms filled in and a lot of chat after this and stuff. And it's disappointing, Paul, because I think we could have had a really, really good night tonight, and that's not how it's turned out. And I know that's not how Jamie and the whole NXTGEN people want the racing to be, because that's not how it's been. That's not how it's been all season. But for some reason tonight, it's just trash. We'd be as well downloading some short oval track and let's go banger racing, because that's all it was tonight. That's not in the spirit of what we're trying to do here. You can tell I'm pretty upset, dude, but I sort of thought, do I need to get into an interview here? But I think things need to be said. That first incident with me in the first race when Michael creases up my inside, the spotter hasn't called that. Okay, he's not called the inside, but I would expect Michael, being a professional racing driver, he's seen how quickly I'm catching the car in front. He knows I'm going to move right. He knows I'm in the championship, and yet he just keeps his foot on. And then from that moment on, there just seems to be a load of niggle going on in the racing, and it's just it's not needed. it's not needed. And I'm sorry, Michael. I've got a lot of respect for you, dude. You race professionally, and that's great. It's just, when you jump back into a championship that you've not taken part in since the Canadian motorsport thing, I think last time Michael joined us, you would expect that somebody just looks at that position at that time and just thinks, you know what, I'm not going to keep it in. This guy's racing for a championship. And listen, it means nothing, does it? At the end of the day, we're not racing for 100 grand here. It's not going to change my life, but you want to do the best you can, and you want to put on the best spectacle for people that are tuning in, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, or whatever. It has to be better. And, I feel sorry for Jamie. Jamie's pretty upset in the chat before we came on here, and I think it could have been a lot better. So sorry to drone on, but yeah, I think emotions are running high from a lot of people tonight. But listen, it's online racing. As I said, we're not racing for 100 grand. It's not going to change my life when I wake up in the morning, as disappointing as it is. So sorry.
And that's absolutely fair, John. And well, I think many at home can appreciate your frustrations and can completely understand. I mean, I have to do the double-edged sword as both commentator and also sim racer as well. I can see exactly where you're coming from. And yeah, it's not been the night that I think many, if anybody down on the field, have wanted compared to, as you say, the spectacle it could have been at the Monza Circuit. But at the same time, there's still a couple more rounds to go, and well, after letting this one simmer off for a day or two, it's the case, it's back in the box, as we like to say, and back out there on circuit. And I do have to ask, with regards to the Silverstone National Circuit, a very short but very fast circuit, taking perhaps some of the best parts of Silverstone and bringing them all together in a short loop, how are you feeling for the very high downforce circuit?
Look, Silverstone Nationals not that difficult, is it? You know what I mean? Anybody that's done sim racing, Paul, you've done a million laps around there, probably the same as I have done, and everybody else. It's four corners that actually mean anything. It's two pretty long straights. One's yeah, it's getting on there. And I think it'll produce a really good spectacle. Look, it's all down to how people want to drive it. Yeah, if people want to drive it and put on a spectacle that Next Gen expect from all their drivers, and I'm defending Jamie and everybody that's involved in Next Gen, if people want to come into this and drive respectfully and let's get going, then it'll be fantastic, as tonight could have been, but it's not turned out that way. If we go to Silverstone, any racing around Silverstone National, because it's not that difficult, it's not technical, it's four corners that really mean anything. It's all about, like tonight should have been, about drafting, positioning yourself, making sure you're in the right spots at the right time. But if people are just going to drive through people and cause accidents, it's not going to be the spectacle that Next Gen want to watch, and that's a shame. There's, I put in a lot of time. I've done a lot of practice for Monza tonight, and it's not really meant anything. You know what I mean? I don't even know where we finished. So does that inspire me to go in and do a load of practice at Silverstone to get the best result I can do, and then just get wiped out by people that just don't really care and just, I'm just going to drive through people and cause accidents and stuff. And that's not what it's about. You know what I mean? And anybody listening to the stream, I'm pretty new to this, and that's not what it's about. You want to put on the best spectacle for anybody that's watching this, whether it doesn't matter whether it's on YouTube, Facebook, whatever, Instagram and stuff. You want to put on the very best racing for people to watch. That's what motor racing is all about. It doesn't matter whether it's in real life or online. It's got to be the best spectacle. And the people that make that spectacle are the people that sit in the cars. And that's what disappoints me about some of the stuff tonight, is people know better than that. Yeah. And yeah, look, we'll go to Silverstone next week. Hopefully it's better than tonight, because that's not good viewing. And anybody that's watching this, I apologize for for the streamers. I'm sure if you bring Jamie in, and like I said, I really feel for the guys at NXTGEN because they're trying to put together a massive. I don't think anybody understands the amount of work that these guys have to put in to put this thing on in the first place for us all to come racing, and for us not to deliver that as drivers, that's pretty poor.
Oh, indeed, John. And again, I can echo your sentiment and I can understand exactly where you're coming from. And whilst I can't say things are going to be brighter next week, indeed, I can't sugarcoat anything along those lines. And I don't want to sugarcoat it, although some would think perhaps I should. At the same time, I think it's great that you've been able to get those grievances, albeit not calling out specific individuals, but that's absolutely fair enough. And I respect that in its entirety. But it's great you've been able to get those grievances out on air. And I think when we do speak to our interviews tonight, there might be similar sentiments there, no doubt. But the fact that you've been transparent, that in itself takes quite a bit of bravery live on air, but credit to yourself. And I do have to ask, just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or thank you to live on the broadcast? I get the thing, you might want to give a shout out to someone very close to your heart.
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Junior. He's obviously not been part tonight. We both work for the same company, and we both got invited to go and do the endurance race at PFI. I'm far too busy. I run their national branch network, and just so busy I can't even begin to tell you. But Junior went there. He's teamed up with Adam Smalley and Chris, my fleet manager, and a few other people in Proximo, and pleased to say they had second overall in the endurance race and first overall in the sprint race. So shout out to Junes. One thing that's going to make my daughters laugh, and I need to shout this out, I have absolutely no idea what this means, but I want to give a shout out to the 5 kitty lickers, right? My daughters are going to piss themselves laughing. I have no idea what that means. They've sent me a message earlier on. I've made the shout out, girls. I love you to death. You know that. And if that makes you night, then so be it. But yeah, I'd like to know what it means, but hey ho.
Well, well, Google that at your own risk, ladies and gentlemen, tuning in at home, in case it is something you don't or not. I'm not going to be Googling that anytime soon, but I'm sure they might be cracking up in the chat. But at the same time, congratulations to your son for his performances at PFI. And well, with that, John, thank you for joining us in the interview room. And we do look forward to seeing yourself and Team HSR take to the Silverstone National Circuit in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. I don't want to sound like a moaner tonight. That's not what I came on here for. But yeah, I just want to defend NXTGEN and everybody that's involved in it, because I know they want a better show than that. So I'm not on here complaining and stuff. Like I said, it's not like we're racing for £1 million and it's going to change my life tomorrow. But yeah, we'll see you next week at Silverstone. Let's have it.
Oh, indeed. We look forward to it, John. But until then, have a great evening and all the best.
Thanks, man.
So hearing there from John Higgins Sr., our pro driver, who I think got it straight out there with regards to the frustrations from tonight, but also it's great to be honest when live on air. And again, that takes a lot of guts. He could have just simply said it wasn't a night and things didn't go right and let it go there. But indeed pointed out that in his opinion, the racing was below the standard we expected. Indeed, defending NXTGEN race in terms of the series being put on versus what we saw tonight, expectations versus the outcome. And hopefully, we do hope there'll be less major incidents at Silverstone National. And John Higgins Sr., indeed his teammates of John Higgins Jr. and Rob McGregor will be all fired up for the penultimate round of the season. But speaking of another driver, I think was fired up going into tonight and maybe quite fired up come the end of tonight, we now come on to our first prime driver, and that is Mark Sykes, who had, of course, that P6 in race number 1, another win added to his belt, and also a podium in race number 2 of that P9, and just missing out on the podium in the end in race number 3. But as we do bring him into the interview room, the 666 driver joins us now. Mark, you told me in the build-up to tonight that you were thinking that you had a lot of pace in the car, but given how it normally goes between practice and racing, it doesn't normally work out. But a winning class in race number 1, a third place in race number 2, and not too far off the podium in race number 3. Surely it was a great night, despite some of the incidents out on circuit.
Yeah, I really enjoyed tonight, Paul. Obviously, my quali was really good. P3 in quali overall which was one of the best I've ever done. I was really chuffed with that. But again, the Hyundai, I don't know why off the start it seemed to bog down and you seem to lose 3-4 places. But yeah, just stuck to my rhythm, kept my pace going, and I was really chuffed with race one. Really chuffed with the win overall with race one in my class. Race two, again started. I think I started sixth. Was it sixth? Yep. I started. Yeah. Again, the bog down at the start. I don't know how to cure this, but yeah. Again, just kept my rhythm, kept my pace, kept my head down, and yeah. Done really well. Race three, don't know what happened at the start. T1, I got a knock somewhere from somebody, which my crew told me my wheels were out of alignment, and it was. The car felt really odd, really awful. So I had to pit for repairs, which put me to the back of the grid. Luckily, the safety car happened because of an accident, so I'd be able to catch the back of the pack up. And then was battling. I think it's Mark Arrowsmith for most of the race, which was nice to be in a battle. And then finish the race. Can't remember. Was it P4 or 5 overall? Something like that. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed tonight.
Oh, indeed. You did look as though you were really enjoying it out there at the Monza Circuit. And I have to ask, particularly in race number one, when you were pretty much leading off the line and we saw you taking the fight to some of the pros out there, was your aim to fight them, or was it to sort of stay with them and then fall back away once the field had spread out?
To be honest, my game plan was to stick with them, to see what I could do. This season has been a sort of a test for me. To be honest, I was... when Jamie Dorey come to me and said, come and race the touring cars, I was like, I hate front-wheel drive. But Jamie has taught me how to race a front-wheel drive, and I'm absolutely loving it. I race the GT3s at NXTGEN, love that. But to be honest, I really, really like the touring cars. I was a bit dubious about racing it because I didn't really know how to handle the car. But Jamie Dorey has taught me a lot about the car, which I really appreciate. But yeah, in that race one, I thought, right, I'm going to try and stick as close as I can with these pro class guys, which I did quite successfully, and just see if I could keep pace with them. That was my game plan.
Well, indeed, it worked out, and that game plan successfully executed to bring home your class win. I believe that is your first class win, unless I'm mistaken, unless there was one at Brands Hatch, although I'm not 100% sure on that.
No, I'm not sure about Brands. I did well at Brands. Brands Indy it was a circuit I quite liked, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to look back on that to see if I did get the class win at Brands. But yeah, I'm really chuffed with the class win in race one at Monza. Really like the circuit. Really like Monza.
Indeed. And then going into race number two, of course, we saw you have that slow start, as you mentioned, the car bogging down, but finding yourself battling amongst the likes of Ben Bennyworth and Paul Scott. But I think there were a couple of slowdowns that started to creep in and hinder your speed as well.
Yeah, it was mostly T1. T1 cutting that first part of the chicane. I was getting a lot of slowdowns, which I was trying to lose between the second part of the chicane and the next corner, which wasn't quite successful for me. But yeah, so I had to sort of let the time go, which I was a bit gutted about. And in race three, I sort of learned from my mistakes and tried not to take so much of the curb into T1.
Well, indeed, and I have to ask, with regards to the reverse free grid, of course, the number 8 was drawn from the Lottery Bowl, not the number 9, which would have put you on pole. Were you a bit gutted at that?
I was a bit gutted at that, actually. I mean, was it last race Snetterton? I was drawn on pole, then got a nudge into, I think it was T2 at Snetterton, which put me back. But I was a bit nervous at Snetterton being on pole. But I would have been more confident at Monza being on pole with the pace I had tonight.
Oh, indeed, and you're showing a lot of pace. And whilst you couldn't quite make it 3 podiums out of 3, coming close at the end there with the battle with Arrowsmith and also John Burnham. But with this wave of momentum now, we've got Silverstone National in a week's time for the penultimate round. How are you feeling for the high downforce circuit?
Yeah, Silverstone National is one of the circuits I quite like, actually. So I'm pretty confident going into it. Hopefully, Mr. Dorey can give me a few pointers about what to do around there as usual. But yeah, feeling quite confident about Silverstone. I'm hopefully going to take the pace I've learned and stuff I've learned from Monza into Silverstone and hopefully get some results.
Oh, indeed. Well, that's brilliant to hear, and fingers crossed for you in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Mark, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on air tonight?
Well, obviously, Mr. Dorey, Mr. Jamie Dorey's given me a lot of coaching, which has really, really helped my racecraft and really, really, yeah, give me confidence in my racing in general. And to you, Paul, for the commentary, it's been absolutely brilliant throughout this season. You are, the best commentator out there.
Oh, that's awfully kind of you to say, Mark, and I really appreciate the compliment, but also I think Jamie will really appreciate the thank you, and well, that coaching he's been providing has definitely paid off, and I might have to ask him for a lesson or two in touring car racing
Definitely,
sometime.
mate. Definitely, he'll help you out anytime, mate.
Oh, indeed. But with that, Mark, congratulations on the great runner results today. Thank you for joining us in the interview room, as always, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time at Silverstone.
Cheers, Paul.
All the best. So hearing that from Mark Sykes, our Pro-Am driver in the number 666 machine, and whilst that number may be cursed for some, depending on what you believe in the supernatural or whatnot, it is the case that Mark Sykes, they're not letting the 666 curse him, if anything, just spurring him on, and indeed some coaching from Jamie Dorey, really enabling him to extract the most out of the car there, the Hyundai Veloster. The only change, of course, of what held him back was the fact he couldn't quite get the starts he wanted, with the car bogging down on the initial launch, but we saw that in qualifying and also over the course of the races, really delivering the pace. And while some slowdowns really stumped his progress in races 2 and 3, this is a Mark Sykes that we've been seeing grow over the last couple of rounds, but it is he's inching more and more towards the front on pace. At Snetterton, it wasn't quite there, but today at Monza, it was unleashed, and I can imagine it's going to be a force to contend with in the final 2 rounds of the season, as we have Silverstone and then Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit to wrap it up. So one to definitely watch. He could make his way a bit further up the Pro-Am class standings before all is said and done. As we now come to our third interview this evening, we go from one NXTGEN Racing driver to another NXTGEN Racing driver, going from NXTGEN Racing Blue to NXTGEN Racing Orange, and that is Jamie Dorey, our Pro Class driver, who I'd like to also nickname as Mr. Second Place today, because in all 3 races, securing second place. And as he joins me in the interview room now, Jamie, bit of an erratic day today across and up and down the field. We heard about that from John Higgins Sr. in particular earlier on in the interview room. But for yourself, a very consistent day, albeit that last race, a bit of drama towards the end. Would you say it's been a strong day applying your Turkington-esque approach, or do you feel as though there's a bit more on the table?
Yeah, I don't know what happened this week, to be honest. I think everyone had their Monster Energy plug. I think I don't know what happened with the driving. It was quite erratic out there. Obviously, I'm trying to score points. I say, to my fellow teammates to help where can. Yeah, I was trying to stay out of it, but try and score points. I mean, from my point of view, there was a lot of untowards going on within, battleground, should we say. It is what it is. I can't really say much, but yeah, it's not too bad.
Oh, indeed. And with the results from today, of course, getting a nice big points haul to carry you forward. But in qualifying, we saw yourself and Mikey Doble working very well together. Doble being on P2 and P4 for you. Given how important slipstream is and working together is in qualifying here at Monza, do you think that was where you wanted to be, or were you still trying to go for that front row lockout on the pair of you?
100%. I mean, in the test races, we had the pace. The Honda is, as I've mentioned a number of times, is very down on power. It's very good on the brakes and steering. We were trying to utilize the cars slipstream to each other. I think myself and Mikey on our fastest laps both made stupid mistakes and got a 1x. It would have been very close, but yeah, definitely we were trying to go for the 1-2. The game plan is obviously to try and utilize the teammates in a fair and effective manner. But yeah, obviously what happened.
Oh, indeed. And then coming into the races themselves, of course, we saw this big exchange between yourselves at NXTGEN Racing Orange and also Verano Motorsport, focusing on the positives before we had some of the incidents happen, because, of course, those incidents will go to the stewards and whatnot. We saw plenty of modes where there was this, where Verano Motorsport would get ahead and sort of provide a rolling roadblock, and then we'd see yourself and Mikey Doble doing a bit of bump drafting, also trying to fit you both of your cars between the Verano Motorsport drivers. Just take us through from your perspective that dynamic of where it's sort of a 2-on-2 situation. You're not racing as individuals, you're racing as a pair.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, the dynamic from my point of view, I can only really speak on my point of view, was obviously I'm going to use Mikey to try and help me out where possible. My main goal was to just try to keep Gavan very close to me. You know, with 9 points between us with the drop rounds applied going into here, it was a case of just trying to keep him within touching distance or grasp. Um, I mean, trying to work together is quite difficult with bump drafting and things. Obviously, it was a great help. I was just solely focused on trying not to get hit, taken out, whatever, when we're racing as close as we are. Obviously, that didn't go quite to plan, but yeah, I was just trying to do the very Turkeyton-esque, you know, try and stay out of trouble, but it doesn't always work.
Indeed, and we did see a bit of trouble coming away, particularly in race number 3. And whilst we're not going to ask you to dissect exactly what happened coming out of the final quarter to the finish line live on air, I do have to ask, is perhaps that the least conventional way you've ever crossed the finish line?
Yeah, it was different, put it that way. At that point, I knew what was going on. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I knew what was going on. I know what Verano are trying to do is the same as us, and vice versa. I, I, by the way the Honda brakes, if the Audis broke at a similar pace or later, I know that car's going to go deep. So I kind of stand the anchors, use the gearing to go slow it down more. Obviously, going around the outside, what happened. I haven't had too much of a look from it. However, when I was facing backwards, shall we say, I was looking in my rear view mirror at roughly where the start finish line was, hoping that I'd get across it. And luckily, I managed to spin the car around and just missed the wall, or just clipped the wall.
Oh, indeed. So it was very close between the two of you. In fact, practically a photo finish, albeit normally photo finishes have both cars pointed the same way and with their noses together. In this case, it was your Honda pointed one way and Danes' Audi pointed the other way. But that aside, of course, that'll be investigated after the race, I'm sure. But looking ahead to Silverstone National in a week's time, a circuit that's quite short but very fast paced. How are you feeling for the penultimate round circuit?
If anything's tonight to go by, apprehensive, I think the correct word is. You know, at the end of the day, whatever happens in the championship, you know, I'm here to race close wherever it is and race fair. Obviously, incidents do happen. I understand that. However, I just want it to be a good end to the season, as we've had all season. The Honda round there, it's quite good because it's quite a flat track. We'll have to wait and see once we've got the battle pack, really. Like I say, it'll just be a case of trying to get those podiums, trying to get those top fives, and if I can, fairly get those wins.
Oh, indeed. But just before we do let you go, Jamie, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on air this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to Goodyear for the tyres, because they took a bit of a beating going across the line backwards. Obviously, thank you to everyone who watches, is involved in it, and to yourself and all the NXTGEN sponsors. Yeah, onwards and upwards.
Oh, indeed. And I think everyone will appreciate that from the sponsors at NXTGEN and whatnot, Jamie. But with that, congratulations on your results today. Thank you for joining us in the interview room as always. And we look forward to seeing you out of the circuit at Silverstone in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul.
Take care. So hearing there from our pro driver of Jamie Dorey, and again, you can hear mixed emotions with regards to tonight. 3 very strong performances, but particularly the final round, a bit of a difficult one with the battling across the line there. And of course, Not trying to put words into anyone's mouth or anything along those lines there, but I think a lot of drivers, Jamie himself included, but all having to take a step back from tonight's race. I think look at it on a cool head because some tempers really did fire off. And as he said there, I think everyone's had their monster in terms of Monster Energy drink being referenced there and going all in when perhaps things could have been done a little bit differently, but sometimes that's the way it goes with respect to the racing. And well, still Jamie Dorey picking up some major points and holding on to what will be a slender but still important lead in the Pro Championship with 2 rounds to go. But as we now come to our final interview this evening, it is our interview who has not joined us before, as I'm to understand, and that is, it means it'll be the first time we do hear from Ben Bennyworth. And well, what a story Ben Bennyworth has had over the course of the season. His run of triple wins has been broken this evening, but as he joins me in the interview room, Ben, solid driving from yourself, not just today, but over the last few rounds. And well, I have to ask you, before we come into all your specific racing today, how do you feel about the fact that you hold probably what is going to be an unbreakable record in this series for, I think it's 11 wins, sorry, about 9 wins on the bounce in a whole sequence?
Well, I think it was actually 10 wins on the bounce from what I last checked.
Sorry, 10, yes, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how I did it. Just kind of got my head down in that kind of terms, really. Like you said, just kind of stayed out of trouble and just kind of did what I did in those races, and also in a way was kind of lucky that all the other Pro-Am drivers were kind of having problems at the back. So yeah, it's kind of a blend of those two, to be honest with you.
Oh, indeed, we're absolutely superb, Brian. Of course, that run ended tonight with race number 1. But just before we come to race 1, we need to talk about qualifying. Didn't look as though you could quite find the toe to give you that pace in qualifying. Did you feel as though qualifying didn't go the way you wanted it to, with Sykes being right up there in P3?
Yeah, like the thing about Monza is that it's one of those circuits that you need a good toe, and I kind of realised even in practice as well, if no one's ahead going to give you that toe, you're kind of stuffed. So it was just trying to find the right gap between the guy in front trying to give you the toe, and also kind of not screwing yourself over in the braking zone. So I just kind of found it a little bit difficult in qualifying terms. I could have definitely maybe found half a second if I was in the right zone, in the right what's the word? The right blend of being in that draft, but also trying to find that right breaking point as well. But yeah, I mean, I could have easily probably found maybe 2 tenths to maybe half a second. So, but anyway, I mean, to be honest, Monza's not really. It doesn't really matter whereabouts you qualify at Monza. It's more about what you do in the race. So, and that's kind of what matters, by all means.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of it all coming down to the race 1, I think was the race that it didn't go your way at all. Just take us through what happened in race 1, because we did see that retirement from yourself.
So I got off to a decent start. I think I was up to. Actually, I can't even remember whereabouts I was. I think I got up to the safety car. The safety car kind of screwed me over a little bit, because I knew that the problem with having the safety car is that it bounces everyone up, and with it being a track like Monza, it's gonna benefit the people behind. So I knew I had to sort of get a foot on it. And then, unfortunately, the contact with Rob McGregor going into the Aravan, first chicane, let's put it that way. Unfortunately, that was the end of it. Unfortunately, and out of the race before I even had a chance.
Oh, indeed, but whilst you did have that retirement in race number 1, you came charging back in race number 2, coming all the way from the back of the field to finish P5, winner of the Prime class, and right on the heels as well of the leading pro drivers. That must have felt something special.
Yeah, I think that's one way of putting it, isn't it? Yeah, starting from back of the grid to finish P5. I mean, if you said that to me before the end of the day, I would have probably snapped someone's arm off for saying that. But I'll happily take that. I'll happily take a top 5 out of starting from the back.
Oh, indeed, and then translated it through into a race number 3. Of course, we had the reverse grid number of P8. I have to ask, did that make you quite happy, given that would mean you'd start on the second row?
Yes, kind of. Again, being at the front, kind of being on the first 2 rows, it doesn't really make that much of a difference because obviously everyone's getting a toe behind you. But again, managed to get off to a good start. As I said, as long as I was ahead of Paul Scott, somehow, then I'd been chuffed with that. Really, even taking a pro-am win. But it was more of a case of just getting through the first chicane, getting through the first lap, not making sure that you don't get hit by anyone, and especially around the track like Monza where it's so heavy on the braking, and the Audis aren't the best in terms of braking, so you're just kind of hoping that other people around you have noticed that you've got to brake at least another 50 meters before everyone else does. But again, taking another top 10, and again another win in the pro-am class. If you said to me before, again, after the first race, I'd have taken 2 wins, I would have been over the moon with that, so I can't complain at all.
Oh, indeed, and right to be over the moon with 2 wins in 3 races today. And of course, those wins adding to your very impressive points haul. And with only 2 rounds to go, I have to ask, are you starting to feel as though that Pro-Am Championship crown is yours? Or is it, when you go to Silverstone in a week's time, just another day, another job in the car?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem is that I won't be here for Brands Hatch, unfortunately. I won't be available for that, so it's kind of a case of, again, just do what I can at Silverstone and then see what happens from there. I'm hoping that maybe the championship might be wrapped up at Silverstone. I mean, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself on that one, but again, it's just another case of go out, try and finish in front of all the pro-ams, try and get as much top 10s as I possibly can, and then come Brands Hatch, we'll see what happens.
Oh, indeed. And just a quick thought on Silverstone National. Is it a circuit you're looking forward to?
Yeah, again, it should hopefully suit the Audis in certain places, especially going through Cops, coming out of Maggots and Beckett's. It definitely suits the Audi in terms of mid-corner, in terms of traction out of the corner. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to Silverstone. I definitely will. I think it definitely will suit the Audi in certain places, and hopefully take advantage of the other cars around me.
Oh, indeed. We look forward to seeing you take to the circuit in a week's time. But before we let you go, Ben, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to live on air this evening?
I want to thank Audi for giving me a good car. Yeah, Audi. That's all I can say. Give me a good car off the start lines.
Well, they'll definitely appreciate that, Ben, like you've appreciated the German machinery under your hands and feet. But with that, thank you for joining us in the interview. Congratulations on your brilliant run of results today, and we look forward to seeing you at Silverstone in a week's time.
Thank you very much.
Take care. So here and there from Ben Bennyworth, our Pro-Am interview, our last interview of the day, and, well, corrected us there with regards to 10 wins on the bounce. Of course, that run of wins coming to a halt today with what was race number 1, where it all went wrong for Bennyworth with that contact over the course of the race after the safety car, but still coming back to then take 2 wins out of 3 on the bounce, despite it all and everything that happened, particularly that run from the back of the field in race number 2 to P5, an absolutely superb run, and you could definitely understand why he is potentially, of course, Ben Bennyworth, to be crowned our Pro-Am champion next week. And whilst he won't be in attendance at Brands Hatch Grand Prix in the season finale, which will be a shame because we'd love to see him cross that final finish line and crown him our champion, of course, if that's the way it goes. He'll be giving it everything, there's no doubt about that, to get the championship all said and done before he does take that hiatus for round number 10 at the end of the season. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, there concludes all of our post-round interviews, and now all we can say is thank you very much for watching. Now, if you have enjoyed the show tonight and you've been following the season throughout and you do want to know more about the Next Gen Racing community, then why not check out our official website. That is www.nextgenracing.co.uk. For if you do go to our website, the home of clean and fair sim racing for all, it is the case that we do host a whole variety of professionally organised sim racing events, championships, and the community in general community races over the course of each and every year. And Next Gen Racing continue to grow. And if you do go to our website, you can find out all the information about us and what's upcoming and ongoing. And on top of that as well, it is the case that if you are not, well, my apologies there, bring up the wrong slide, but if you're not inclined to go to our website, you can always go to our Facebook group, and that is, of course, at www.facebook.com/groups/NextGen Racing, and there you can find out what's latest happening with Next Gen Racing in terms of series on iRacing, a set of course of competition, and also on the console instances of the sim platforms such as Gran Turismo 7, and plenty of friendly faces there if you do want to have a chat with the guys and girls who run the community or just form part of it. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, now our drivers will be getting ready to make the way back to the United Kingdom for the penultimate round of the season. It is, of course, at Silverstone for round number 9 on Thursday, the 6th of October 2022. And, well, we thought the laps today were fast at Monza. Hopefully not as chaotic at Silverstone, but one thing's for certain, it'll be pedal to the metal at the national variant. We've been a very short circuit with a limited number of major corners. Everything will be on the line and up for grabs as our drivers make the way to pick up as many points before going into the season finale. Will it be the case that Ben Bennyworth can wrap up the Pro-Am Championship in a week's time with a round to go? And could we potentially see the gap between Jamie Dorey and Gavan Gardener in the Pro Championship condense ever further? We'll find out all that and more at Silverstone. But until then, thank you for tuning in as always. And until next time, it's goodbye from us at Next Gen Racing. It's goodbye from me as your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit of the Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.